1, 2,
Standing
go.
by. You know it.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or possibly stream in, as I said, or possibly be on the show, as if you can see there with Steph. So we will be celebrating at the end of the episode the number of this episode. This is our 300th episode. Now, there's more than 300 episodes in the feed because we had all the ancillary shows, the Thundercast, the Tito and Bill Good Time Hour, with the failed punk show I had. So there's some surprises there in the feed, but in terms of Comic Book Bears Prime, this is our 300th show, and the three of us will talk about that a little later in the show. But what we do have beforehand is we have the return of an old friend, and we're joined by two new friends. So we have Rich Rivera of Stabbity Bunny fame. And Rich, I'm just so happy you're joining us on this particular episode, because I really feel in terms of comic books, we kind of grew up together a little bit, because the first issue of Stabbity was 2 months after we had our first show. So I'm thrilled that you're part of this tonight. So
I'm honored to be here. It's great.
And as you'll see in the not quite Brady Bunch configuration, but in the squares that we have there, we have Matt Knowles and we have Steph Cannon, and they're here to talk about their Kickstarter. Yeah, 2 Kickstarters for the price of 1 in more ways than you know tonight. So I'm going to hand over the interview baton to Steve, because I tend to bogart stuff, and I'm still probably going to interject and rudely interrupt at points, but let's get the baton over to Steve. And Steve, if you would start with I think we should be gracious, as if this is our house, to Matt and Steph, and talk about their particular Kickstarter first.
Absolutely. And again, welcome all three of you guys. It's wonderful to have you on the show. Rich, it's wonderful to see you again on the show. And Matt and Steph, welcome to the Comic Book Bears. One of the things that we like to do, when we have people come on for the first time, especially, is to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about yourself, but also let us know what got you into comics. What was that little spark that said, hey, I love these little funny books. They look pretty cool.
Steph, you want to go first?
I am Steph Cannon, and I am one half of Insymmetry Creations with Matt Knowles, who will talk about himself in a little bit. I
want to put this up here.
Yeah, that's us. If you can't awesome. Tell, I'm on the left, and then that's Matt on the right. But Matt would try to say that we look completely alike, which is not true.
Hey, seriously, if you just cover up our faces and then you Photoshop and you make maybe sure. We look the same. No. But who knows?
So anyway, I got into comics later in life. And by that, I mean as a teenager, because a lot of people I feel go on these shows and they say, oh, I was reading them as a kid. I didn't get into comics until I was a teenager, even though I have distinct memories of loving the Tim Burton Batman movies as a kid. But as far as actual funny page comics, I didn't start getting into them. Superman was my first comic love, and then later on as a teenager, I discovered Watchmen, and I fell in love with it and never looked back again. But I've wanted to be a writer in some sense of the word, whether it was journalism or prose or comics. since literally I was 10 years old, and I won a competition with my local newspaper that was doing like a horror kind of like short story like competition. So
Yeah.
I've been into writing since I was a little kid.
Awesome. It's awesome.
My name is Matt Knowles. I am, as Steph said, the other half of Insymmetry Creations. I live in Florida. Steph lives in California, and we work every day on video chat, just like it's a virtual office, doing the things that we do. We both are writers, and we work with art teams from all over the world, because unless you want stick figures in your comics, we are not the artists.
We're not the ones. No.
I've been a writer in a completely different sense. I came from the metal music world, so I've always been a musician. I've always been a writer and a storyteller there. And when I wanted to get back into writing, I took a sabbatical from being a musician for a bit. I wanted to write music, but I wanted there to be more to the story than just music. And writing some songs and a little side story where it was more like a lot of music and a little bit of story and illustrated novel writing kind of went like this, to where there was a little bit less music and a lot more fully developed comics and graphic novels. And I can say this, my contribution to the writing changed dramatically when Steph and I started working together. And then it also changed because of Richard as well, because Steph and I, most of the stuff we write is a lot more dark fantasy and things like that. And Richard was like, hey guys, you guys have really good fun personalities. I challenge you to write something that's more all ages. And his leading and his pushing is what made us start doing Misfits Clubhouse as well, which is one of our titles. We do Heirs of Isildur, Tales from Nocturnia, I Am Keto, and Misfits Clubhouse are our 4 main titles at the moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I actually like, something that you mentioned, actually, that you both mentioned there. Steph, you talked about sort of when, your first competition for writing, it was a horror competition. And then Matt, you've got, that background with metal and, and music. And of course, Heirs of Isildur, there is a nice mix of that. There's the horror element. There's there's definitely a metal element there. And of course the sci-fi fantasy element that's kind of blended together. When you started writing together, how quickly were you able to really mesh a lot of your interests and your backgrounds together to write with, whether it's for Heirs or for one of your other titles?
Well, I'll take that one to start. So Heirs actually started, that was something I was working on before Steph and I met. And I already had the music written and I already had the first arc mapped out, but I'd only released the first 2 issues, and they were very rudimentary illustrated novels. But when we met, the thing that I saw from Steph that I really liked, she did a lot of one-page short form comics that were really well developed. The art was incredible in those, and I had the more developed ideas, but the art and the presentation was a lot more rudimentary. She really enjoyed the way that I would pair the music up with the story. Mm-hmm. And I really liked her presentation there. And we realized very quickly on that the other person had some of the skills that were well developed that we both needed. And as soon as we kind of yin and yanged it together, she helped to really develop Heirs as it went. We were able to start developing titles like Tales from Nocturnia, which is medieval fantasy, where that was the first title that we really developed from top to bottom together. Even though it was an offshoot of Heirs of Isildur, we put that arc together, and that was the first full piece. And it was really good. Assuming we knew right off the bat that it was going to work out well. She started off as story consultant and an editor on where we were with the first Heirs arc, but then after that, there's always been some form of writers rooming everything we do. No matter who's in the lead or whose idea, there's always a writer's room element to us putting this stuff together.
That's a really cool process. It's
Yeah.
almost like I love the way the analogy that you guys use with the blend of music and visuals is almost like a punk rock approach to it, just hard, fast, and heavy, but you don't have to be like super long. And then hearing Steph talk about how you kind of came up into writing, it's almost like you take a flash fiction approach to that, like you these really emotional, hard-hitting, full-fledged stories, but you don't take up a lot of, you don't take up a lot of page count to tell it. You can condense that all into these packages, and that's incredibly hard. I mean, there's a craft to it. It's not easy to do that. You have to choose your words wisely and choose your plot layouts and everything so delicately. How did you, so I know when you started writing, it was kind of locally. What have you done to kind of, each of you together, to kind of develop that into a process, right? Like into a, okay, we need to make it meet these frameworks. That's kind of your brand.
It's kind of funny because it is very different writing styles, because when I first started off, I had written when I decided, like some of the stories that I have in my mind, I picture as like graphic novels or comics in my head. And so I had done like a long, like 110 plus page script for a graphic novel, but I was kind of jumping into the shorter 1 and 2 page comic forms, because at the time there was a lot of anthologies and a lot of contests in like 2018, 2019 that were asking for that. Whereas Matt was the opposite. He's very long-winded. He's very long-winded and wants to really craft the story out in a long way. And so when we got together, you would think that it would be like, there's no way that these two writers are ever going to agree on how to craft a story. But I feel like our strengths kind of like mixed together a little bit, because he would be like, hey, we need to kind of stretch this out a little bit. We need to explore this a little bit more. And then I would say, okay, but we can also condense it. And somehow that blends together to make kind of a meet in the middle type of scenario. I don't know if Matt would, I think Matt would agree with that.
To build on that, Misfits Clubhouse, the way it's written, we always say it's like Saturday morning cartoons in comic form. And that one being silly and fun. Every like if you get an issue of Misfits Clubhouse, it's always like 3 or 4 stories. It's a 4-page story, an 8-page story, because it's just whatever the page count needs. But we know it needs to be like you're turning on Looney Tunes on a Saturday morning, where you're going to get 3 different 10-minute cartoons in that 10-minute span. Do they have anything to do with each other? Probably not. Can you kill off the Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote in one and he's back alive in the next one? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way we approach Misfits Clubhouse. Obviously, it's not sinister like that. It's pretty lighthearted, but that gives us the ability to be like, okay, we've got these ones over here that are, where we're doing perfect bound books. Heirs of Isildur is always 44 to 56 pages. Every book is perfect bound. But then you've got Misfits Clubhouse, where you're like, hey, we need to find a way to tell the story in 6 pages.
Yeah. So I have a question about that too, because I mean, like you said, you have one that's all ages and one that's a little bit more mature, sophisticated, dealing with a different subject matter. Does that longevity play into your audience and to, kind of their, being an uncle, I've got nieces and nephews, and, you've got their attention span for 5 minutes, but, when they get older and they'll sit somewhere and they can turn more pages, you can keep their mindset for longer. Did you kind of craft it that way? Was that part of that decision-making?
Well, I think that the one thing I'll say here is one of the things that we say when people are at the tables, we like to say our books are coffee table safe. Okay. What that means is just because you've got a medieval fantasy book where you've got, warring factions and it's like World of Warcraft and Dungeons and Dragons, and there's a lot of deaths and stuff like that. And Heirs of Isildur has got some very deep subject matter. There's even some we have to put trigger warnings on because it's very deep. We always say you can take whatever we have, you could throw it on your coffee table, and you don't have to worry about if you're an uncle, if little Johnny comes over and be like, oh crap, little Johnny saw page 110. Now we're going to have a really uncomfortable conversation. We try to make sure that everything we do, because both Steph and I are parents, we want to make sure that we're not going to be contributing to the delinquency of any minors that comes up to our table. And that's, other people may feel differently about what they create. But as far as what we have and what we want to put on our table, that's kind of how they work together, and they kind of fit there, where we always want there to be some form of hope in the book, even if it's a dark situation. We want there to be something that a person can attach to. We always will say we want to create universes you can escape into and characters you can relate to. And if you can do one of those things, no matter how dark the situation is, you can at least have that little bit of hope. Because a lot of us live in a pretty crappy society right now. We all have a lot of struggles, and we want to give you an ability to escape into a fantasy world where you can have some hope and an enjoyment, no matter how bad the situation is. Steph, I didn't mean to take that whole time frame up, but
no,
I'll hand it back over to you.
totally that. I mean, and that's the truth. We have kids, and they may be a little bit older now, but I am a mom. Like I'm a mom. Like I'm a mom, and so I if it's like my kids, I'm like, okay, you guys. I grew up on horror movies. I've shown my kids horror movies. They're teenagers now, and actually like young adults, and so they can handle it. But at the end of the day, I'm a total mom. And so if it wouldn't pass like my mom test, then it's not going to go on our table. That's just a philosophy that we go by. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with people that want to do not safe for work material and that kind of thing. But that's just not what we're doing right now.
No, everything has its audience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate, because I was one of those kids that I had babysitters that decided that I was old enough to watch like all those awesome 80s horror movies, and I'm very grateful for that. But
that's what I grew up on. I mean, and that's like one of the things that I didn't mention in the beginning is I'm a film critic. I review mostly horror movies. That's why like Jaws is my favorite. That's why I've got like my background stuff. So yeah. So there's nothing wrong with that. So we're not disparaging that. It's just the stuff that we create. That's just where we're at right now is where we're, what we want to produce.
Gotcha.
Well, and these guys have heard me gush about horror comics for the past couple of years. Like I really started getting into them big time. And it is kind of nice to be able to have stories that you can share with, younger people or people who maybe aren't like into like the real hardcore gore as much. Or don't want to like open up and see heavy metal style imagery all the time. And again, love that stuff too. But I also love sort of being able to share, some creepy horror comics or some cool horror comics, anything that kind of blends, some sci-fi and fantasy together with that.
We have found in our personal experience with going to shows is that we have more people to come up to our table that are grateful that we have family friendly or at least like PG-13 rated comics versus those that come up and are like, ew, like you don't have like X-rated comics, because they know like people that are looking for that, they're going to know when they walk up to your table whether you have it or not. And so they're just going to walk right past. And they're going to be like, those guys, that guy in the top hat and that girl, like that little girl, they're not, they don't have X-rated.
Well, and I can tell you, I'm gonna put some love on Richard here. We've done a lot of shows with Richard, and one of the things about Richard and Stabbity Bunny, I don't know if you guys have ever been to a show where he's had Stabbity Bunny there and had his big banners in the background, but I've never in my life seen a title sell itself without saying a word like Stabbity Bunny. We did a show with Richard. We did Awesome Con DC. And Richard had to be in his own separate section doing other stuff. And myself and Steph and Andrea Molinari were there, and Andrea had his stuff, and Steph and I had ours. But we had Stabbity Bunny kind of set up in the middle. We sold more Stabbity Bunny at that show with Richard not even at the table than we sold. Andrea sold of his stuff, or we sold of ours, because Stabbity Bunny just sells itself. Because people see this big banner with the smiley face and the bunny there.
And the adorable bunny.
They're like, I've walked past this thing 5 times. What is this Stabbity Bunny? And when they find out that the Stabbity Bunny series itself is not some hacker slasher, and the bunny is more of a talisman of protection for this family, and it's more of a psychological thing. Every single time we sold, people are like, what do I got to do? They're like, do you want to hear about the other specials we have? Do you want to hear about the other stuff? Nope. I just want Stabbity Bunny.
I just want the bunny. We're okay with that.
So we're always trying to work ourselves. Where can we find our Stabbity Bunny? When can we get our thing that's going to break through like that? Because it's so easy for Richard. Richard found his lightning in a bottle. He makes millions of dollars.
If only.
Well, speaking of alternate realities, can you take us through a little bit of the world of Heirs of Isildur and what that's like? Because in some of the descriptive materials on the campaign page, it suggests that there's, apart from the horror elements that we talked about, that there is a steampunk sci-fi
Yes.
element to a lot of this. So if you could just take us through that particular world, really appreciate it for
Sure.
people who are tuning in. Yeah.
Sure. So Heirs of Isildur, at its essence, is a story about a clock and watchmaker named Michael Isildur, who is the most respected citizen in this puritanical mountain village of Shadow's Haven. And the town comes to him to make sure that time is working exactly as it should in a literal sense. Michael is a very curious person, and he's always trying to, envision these big grand schemes, things like that, but he always is kind of stuck in this one lane. Well, he uncovers this buried abandoned laboratory that has all these machines in there that have been lost to time and decay. He starts tinkering around with them and doing like you do in steampunk, where you take something old and repurpose things and make it new again. And in the process, he starts opening up these time portals that start bringing people from other eras to him. And he doesn't realize that as he's doing this, that it's also bringing some darkened energy in that is also sort of affecting the area around him. So he has this conundrum. The first arc is called the Crossroads Conundrum, where he realizes all these people that are coming through were isolated, alone. Some were contemplating suicide. Some were they're like, one guy was ready to freeze to death where he was from, and he literally sees this portal open up, and he crawls through the portal, and now he's now alive just because of Michael Isildur. And Michael has this conundrum: do I continue saving these people? Because every time I open a portal, it seems like somebody's coming through that is now, got a new lease on life and is now a part of this found family, so to speak. But if I do it, then now everybody comes to me to make sure that time works exactly as it should. I'm the one that's now breaking the timeline. So he has this moral conundrum that's going on there. So the arc that we are in right now is called The Perilous Prospects. At the end of Crossroads Conundrum, there's an apocalyptic event that takes place. And the pitch line for the Perilous Prospects is an apocalypse is happening in the town of Shadow's Haven, and the only way to stop it might be through those who accidentally caused it. So Michael Isildur and this group that's around him have had their hand in what has caused this apocalypse. They're not really the only ones that are at fault. They didn't do it on purpose. And part of what you explore in the Perilous Prospects are, well, there's this one group over here that had their hand in it, and there's this other group over here, and you kind of hear those things that talk about, oh, this one crime could have been solved if the FBI and the CIA would have talked to each other, and the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing, and so because they didn't communicate, all this crazy crap happened. There's some of that stuff that happens in Heirs of Isildur as well. If this one group had more trust and gave up their information, then maybe this other thing over here maybe never would have happened. But if that happened, then we wouldn't have a fun story that we could go in and delve into and go from there. So we are in issue 4 of 5 for the Perilous Prospects. It was not ever expected to be a 5-issue arc. But as we got to the wrapping elements of the arc, we realized that it was just going to be too long to put into a single issue, even doing 44 to 56 pages per perfect bound book. In this day and age, you don't want to be going out there and being like, oh, well, here's this 80-page volume and here's this 32-page and all that. You need to make sure that the releases are all about the same length. So that's how it's where it is now. We've already got all the art, everything for the final issue as well. We are so stoked with this 4th issue that's coming out because the end just isn't near. The end begins in issue 4. And where we're at in that story, we are so psyched. We love the characters. We love the different swerves and twists and turns. If you're somebody that's brand new and you're like, yeah, I want to start, but it seems like it's pretty daunting, we make sure that every issue, we make sure there's a good synopsis at the beginning of the events that are pertinent to that issue. We put character profiles at the end of the issue as well. That way we don't spoil if there's any kind of reveals that happen in the issue, we don't spoil it previous. But we try to make sure that there's a lot of fun stuff. If you're somebody that really wants to dig into the deep parts of the universe, we'll put QR codes in the book so that way you can go listen to some of the metal music that might help to expand out the universe. We try to make sure it's something you can really escape deeply into if it's something you want to get into. We love the Perilous Prospects. We love where it's going, and we can't wait to be able to get this issue out there into the world.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. definitely tell your enthusiasm for it is definitely definitely radiating.
Well, and what's really cool there, like there's a complexity there, and I didn't really pick up on it until you started explaining it. So the lawyer in my brain is like, oh, you just described approximate cause. Like you have people, it's negligence, right? You have people who just created these things that happen, but they didn't mean for it to. But it's just like the domino effect that's made these things. But it's almost kismet in a way, right? Because there are. As you mentioned earlier, you like this idea of finding hope in dark places, and there's almost if this dark thing hadn't have happened, then these people wouldn't have had this avenue for safety, right? Like out of darkness comes light. So that's for I think you're right. Like people of all ages need to hear that, especially in a world that sometimes we kind of monetize bleakness, right? Like and it's like bleakness is popular, and I mean it's the Neil Gaiman approach, right? Like you go through the entire battle of when he's in hell, and it's at the end of the day, it's hope that's the final answer there. And I think that's there's a really cool comic history in that. And there's kind of this really unique tether to the world that just you guys have crafted these stories in. That's very interesting to me.
Well, one of the neat things too, that when Steph and I started working together, having a male and female perspective, she was big on making sure, and Steph, please, correct me if I'm putting words into your mouth, on making sure that females in the stories weren't just tropes, where it wasn't just like, where it wasn't just the helpless, hopeless female that needed the male to come in and be the knight in shining armor. And you do have some of those in a story, but when you get to where we're at in the story now, there are 4 very different females in very different areas, very different walks of life that have very different roles in there that every one of them is a complete badass in their own way. Now there's, I think 4 or 5 guys that are the same way. Everybody's got their own badassery going on, but there's like, we've had like teenage girls come up to our table and they're like, we need a story that's got successful women in there. We need a story that's got, the women that are definitely, heroic. And we're like, well, you've come to the right place, because there's definitely going to be a lot of options for you to choose from in Heirs of Isildur, because you've got Merc and Syndrome and Natasha and Serenity. Every one of them has got this crazy path that they came down. And if you just look at the character arc that each one of them goes on, you're going to be like, wow, that's a wild arc that each one of them goes through when you get to the end and seeing the character growth. Because Merc, she's that teeny bopper kind of teenage mentality, even though she's late teens, early 20s. And when you get to the start of the Perilous Prospects, Michael Isildur, the main character, basically has become unavailable. And it's kind of he's kind of become unavailable in this supernatural sabbatical kind of thing. And she basically has to become the leader of all these people that have been brought through. And so you quickly see that Merc is no longer this person who's looking to find somebody that's going to lead her, where she has to go and lead people through some very difficult times and do some things that are heroic on her own. And it's neat to be able to have that kind of, to be able to see a character really have that kind of growth.
Yeah, and at the same time, too, we didn't want all our male characters to be these stoic, kind of unemotional, like just brick walls. It was okay for the male characters to be vulnerable and have emotional moments as well, and kind of like character growth, because and that's the good thing about having a pair that's a male and female writer, is that we offer both of those perspectives and go, okay, well, it's okay for this member of the opposite sex to feel these emotions and be, kind of go against the grain in some ways.
Okay, cool. In terms of the writing process, have you surprised each other at any points? And since I assume how because just reading some of the pages that were provided, it is a very unified voice. Have the two of you surprised each other in terms of demonstrating a familiarity with a concept that you weren't exactly anticipating the other person to have?
I feel like we have in the example that I immediately think of, because I'm a dork and I love D&D. And so if anybody has read the Dragonlance novels, the Dragonlance novels are like kind of loosely based off of Dungeons and Dragons, and it was written by a male-female team. And from what I've heard, and I don't know, don't quote me on this, from what I've heard, the more emotional, romantic scenes were written by the man, and the more like battle scenes were written by his female counterpart. And I don't want to say that was completely that with us, but I know that when we first paired together the story that I was writing, the male and female lead, I'm like, no, there's no romantic. I'm like, no, it was like kind of like a post-apocalyptic setting. I'm like, there's no time for that. Like, they're not going to be like falling in love. They have to survive. Like, there's no time for that. Like, no, that's stupid. And Matt was like, but no, that has to happen. Like, like it. And I'm like, no, ew.
Yeah, the life and death situation doesn't also have to be a meet cute. That's a great
Oh, I know. No, like as time has gone on, I've like changed my tune
let's
a little bit.
stop
But at
on
the
mortal
beginning,
fear
I
and
was like,
stop you
ew,
there.
no, like ew, like they haven't even showered. Like that's just unrealistic.
I can tell you the thing that I don't want to say stuff surprised me, but the thing where it all with a lot of our writing, all it takes is somebody just to say one thing, and it like that one phrase can be like the light bulb moment. You're like, holy crap, what about this and this and this? We're writing Tales from Nocturnia, which is a story. It's a medieval fantasy about an executioner named Beninock. He's trying to get out of the family business, but the kingdom around him is falling apart, keeps trying to pull him back into a life of violence. And we had the arc written and we knew what we wanted to do. We were piecing it together, and I was kind of taking the lead on it because I had a lot of ideas. And Steph was like, dude, there is no way that we're writing a medieval story without there being some kind of family drama. This is a medieval kingdom. People have to be related at some point, because if everybody's just this, there's no medieval kingdom that's just a bunch of single people just so happen to be there. And when she said that, I was like, oh my goodness, weird. This is completely the truth. And that changed some of the dynamics. We had like 3 brothers that were in there, but there was some like brother-sister drama that we added in, and some other things.
Like
and I was like, I
fathers
wasn't
and children, because I was like, hold up here. I'm like, ain't no way there's like a village of 100 people and none of them are related. I'm all, that's not real. Especially medieval times. Let's just be real.
But if you look at Tales from Nocturnia, that's one of those stories that kind of flips things on its head. You have this executioner who has literally done that his entire life. That's all he knows. And one of the scenes early on, all he wants to do is be away from execution. And you see him babysitting somebody's, little kid, and all they want to do is play dress up and dolls and stuff like that. And he's like, well, this is better than being an executioner. And who becomes his female counterpart becomes the complete and total badass. And like, she's the badass of the pair. There's people that are like picking on the giant executioner, and she's the one stepping in front. And she's like, if you don't stop, I'm going to take you out and I'm going to kick your ass in the town square. And the executioner is like, wow, that's pretty cool.
And I have one final question about your collaboration. I was surprised when we were talking before the show started that one of you is on the West Coast and one of you is on the East Coast. How did the two of you meet?
So pretty interesting little thing that you bring up there. So back in 2017, end of 2017, there was a person that we both knew in the comic scene and the publishing scene who was getting some flack at the time. At the time, it felt like it was unnecessary, is undeserved. Mm-hmm. And there was a post that he had put up there, and I had put a comment of support in that thread. And that thread just kind of went viral, and hundreds of people commented there. And a few weeks later, I got a notification somebody else had posted there, and it was Steph. And her comment, out of all these people saying whatever jibber jabber in there, was just one that kind of, piqued my interest, because it was just stated in a way that I thought was pretty interesting. I clicked on her profile, and there was some art from one of the one-page comics that she did called Boot Hill. And I was like, hey, I saw your profile, that the art you have in there is awesome. And that was literally the thing that started us. Was for whatever reason,
I was like, no, that's not my art. I can't draw.
but the thing was that she commented in this thread. If that thread wasn't there, and if I didn't get that notification on Facebook, our paths might have crossed, but it crossed in that way. And that was how I started to see the one-page art that she did, how she was able to see the Heirs of Isildur stuff that I had started working on, and then the rest is history. And here we are because that was January of 2018. We're 7 years
Yeah.
later
And
talking
now
about
I'm
the
there
company we
in
have.
Florida every few months at a show. So yeah.
That's
Okay.
I mean, it's like how people meet each other is really
I
kind of
love
fantastic.
it. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
How,
I
like, the
love hearing
collaborations
stories
happen.
like that so much. I love
Oh
it.
yeah.
That's a very cool story. Well, speaking of Florida, the gentleman in the middle in the lower box there, Richard Rivera. So your Kickstarter is for Stabbity Ever After, which has previously come out, and so this is kind of a remixed version of that. So why don't you tell us about this particular Kickstarter and what? Because if people don't know, Stabbity Ever After is sort of almost like an Elseworlds. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean,
Stabbity?
just recently, just a couple of days ago, really simplified it in my mind, because before it would be, well, this is Stabbity Ever After. It deviates from the main timeline when Stabbity falls through a portal into fairyland and is transformed. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, you just go, what if Stabbity Bunny destroyed fairyland?
Yeah.
And it's like, because you anticipate with that what if formula, there's going to be changes with the character, that it's not the main timeline. It's all just packaged up in the what if. So that's kind of how I've condensed it now. But the reason that we're self-publishing again, first of all. So we're once again doing Kickstarter. We're relying directly on fans and retailers that are, that support indie comics. It's just at this point in my life, with everything else I've got going on, for not have other people really wait on me to accomplish something, or if I suddenly get a few extra spare moments for me to be able to jump on a new project or do whatever I want to do right then, or to talk to an artist and maybe they want to collaborate, and it's not all the corporate paperwork and those other barriers between just doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
So certainly distribution is great in its own way. I guess it's like a stamp of validity sometimes, but I really just like to not have any extra barriers between myself, my fans. I can, we could vote on the next cover or whatever. I can have discussions that are a little more, I'm less encumbered. While I don't have the benefits of appearing in previews. It's like, well, I've got a community that I'm building and I can speak directly to those fans. But the thing that's exciting about Ever After is I got to, after we kind of decided we were going to do it, because I've already written issue 3 pretty much, and we got issue 4, and that wraps up that arc in Ever After. And then after that, we're gonna have the great freedom to just do whatever we want. It's gonna do one shots, probably more along the lines of what the size Matt and Steph are doing now. It's a little 44-page, 56-page one shot where I can visit a very, very Matrix-like world or whatever. And there's actually going to be 2 people in the story appear at the end of the first arcs that are kind of the role of cosmic arbiters, and they're kind of going to say, wow, Fairyland, Wonderland, Oz, devastated to a certain degree, and you're kind of at the center of it. Are you good or are you bad? You've done a lot of this to help the little girl, but what are you without her? And they're going to separate the 2 of them. They're going to do that. And then he's going to be on an odyssey of sorts through various other realms where they're going to kind of do a little judging there of is Stabbity Bunny and his methods in this transformed world. Is Stabbity Bunny, a force for good, neutral, evil, to bring in all the D&D terms there. But, where does he really stand? And I started looking at that issue 1, and Ryan Kincaid, who contributes the art for that, Dwayne Biddix, of course, is the main, but Ryan Kincaid wanted to redo some of the artwork. So there's some pages that are completely redone. That was his original splash where Stabbity has just gone through that yellowish portal up there and landed in Fairyland. But I, given the freedom of doing that, and of only 2 issues in, unlike Stabbity Bunny where there's 13, I went through, I read it again, and it's been a decade since Stabbity Bunny 1 first came out, and not, it's been about 8 years since even Ever After came out. And not quite, I guess about 6 years, but my own writing style, I read the story with fresher eyes, and I was like, my weakness, if you will, thing I need to work on the most was I pour so much into the description, into knowing how everything's working, to working, interfacing with the artist, so that they can put down their part, and my dialogue and everything has to be at a minimum, because we've got everything else there, just that kind of that cooperation between the written and the visual. But in so doing, the written, the dialogue, the narration sometimes ended up kind of suffering, because I was I'm offloading as much as I possibly can consciously, and I've written it into the story, but I haven't put it in that form. So when I went back and read it, there were a number of little touches and things that I thought, well, maybe those aren't all that clear. And I intended to be in the story. So I'm not going back the complete opposite direction. I'm not spoon feeding, but I do think I'm completely rewriting issues 1 and 2 as far as the dialogue and narration.
I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, talking about going back and like re-examining your own work, especially on something that's, a character that, for fans of Stabbity Bunny, like, we know the story of like the main book story, but also getting to see it sort of like in a remix or in a what if scenario, and getting to re-look at that whole, what makes Stabbity fun, what makes them interesting, what makes it, kind of wild. And I see Caleb has his hand raised.
Yeah,
and he has something to say. Caleb, do you have something to say?
Yeah, the Zoom version of I don't want to interrupt somebody, but I wanted to, before we move on to like a different topic though, kind of follow up on that. How, from a writer's perspective, I mean, self-critique is hard. Like going back and reading your own work and seeing how that's developed, that's not an easy task, because you both want to be your worst critic and also be like, no, I'm also my own champion. That's, so what was that process like? Not only like functionally what that was processed, but like as a human being, what was that process like for you to go back and revisit that thing that, like you said, it's a decade old at this point? That's you're going back a good minute to see the craft that you've done before. Have you found ways that you have grown, that like you're so, I was a different person back then, so I'm going to interpret things in a different way? What was that like for you?
Well, in a way, I think the way to make it most palatable to myself was that, as you know, within the Stabbity Bunny arc, there's Emmett's story, which is a kind of a one-shot, kind of in between 2 of the issues. And in that one, I began to get closer to the writer I wanted to be on the end of the descriptions and the dialogue, and how much weight I was giving to that, because there was just, in that one, there's no way that the art could have carried everything. And so, in a way, I was like, well, what if the same person that wrote Emmett's story wrote that first Ever After issue? And so, when I went back through to give you some very, very simple examples, I mean, Stabbity just goes through a number of quick scenarios in Ever After, but one of them is with the witch from Hansel and Gretel, and there were little things in there. It was the most obvious of pages for me, because there's little things where I know exactly what I meant, but given some distance, it's like, did I convey that properly to the reader? And there's one instant, the witch is there, and there's this rumble. I make no other reference to it at all, and it's supposed to be because they're talking about Hansel and Gretel, and in this world, there's Hansel and Gretel did not win. She's getting hungry, and there's no way that was necessarily, who's going to make that jump,
Yeah.
Or Stabbity holds up his shirt, and he's in the bottom third of the panel. There's a shirt, it's striped. There's a hole, you can see through the both sides of the shirt and see the witch, and there's blood around it, but there's no real, she doesn't. There's no mention of by her or obviously Stabby mentions nothing, but there's no reference like oh, that shirt, yeah, it was a nasty little fall he had or whatever. There's nothing that again kind of highlights that. Just and then there's always the degree of how much do you highlight it, when you're getting the spoon out, and when is the reader still participating? Because I love the reader to participate and have an aha moment that's not necessarily spelled out, and that maybe if they've been paying attention, they can reward themselves with that realization. So it was basically, instead of like, beating up the me of 10 years ago, it was more like the me of a few years ago, writing that guy a letter. And,
I can take that moment and then play with it in a different way now, right, than I could back then, which is not necessarily, it's not a judgment. It's just saying, hey, I have new tools in my toolbox with which to manipulate this certain area of the plot and the craft. That's very, very cool to be able to do that.
It's almost like collaborating with your older self, or your younger self.
And then using those to create something new from just an artistic perspective. That's very, very cool.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. We just wanted to do a remastering that really was. It was, not like, oh, it's got a blue cover now and it's the colors are more vibrant. This will have.
We added a John Byrne background.
Yeah. I mean, this will probably have 80% rewritten dialogue and narration, completely newly reimagined. It's even in the Kickstarter, one of the pages where the plant ogre and Stabbity meet. There's the page that was, and now there's the page that is, and like the concluding splash page is. Ryan always does great artwork, but he's continued to grow as an artist as well. So he just wasn't he wasn't as satisfied now, the current Ryan, as he could be. And he can't redo the whole book. He's got, Ryan is a busy man. He's always, he's on eBay, live shows. He's doing covers, Marvel, DC, etc. as well. So for him to just kind of pick those moments where he was the least satisfied with his own work and show what he can do now. And I have to say it is dramatically different, which will really help us lead into, the newer issues. It's going to be interesting. We're kind of wrangling with that issue 3 and 4 releases. I really, really want issue 4 to come out in November, which happens to be that when Wicked 2 will be coming out, because I'm already lamenting that we missed this, because there is a witch in that first issue. In the second issue, the Queen of Hearts has dressed up Grace in a kind of Dorothy-like outfit and is saying, "This lady warned me about, these kids, all that." The big bad, is the Wicked Witch, who has been behind the scenes and to be very much in the forefront of 3, and then all 3 realms are coming together in a kind of a crossover war against her in issue 4. So if I could have issue 4 with the Wicked Witch come out at the same time as Wicked, it might not be too bad of a thing. And also
synergy.
Sounds like perfect timing to me.
Y'all are way better at planning than I am. I'm surprised my husband and I got married on the same day.
Well, actually,
he got hit.
Yeah. So, talking about the different aspects of the Kickstarter. Since we're talking about Stabbity now, you shared with us a bunch of different images, different sort of fun covers, fun ways to put and scenarios to put Stabbity in.
Yeah. So just keep in mind, if we can describe these, because this is where we absolutely fail as an audio podcast.
Oh yeah.
We'll just cut all this out.
So if we could just provide some descriptive elements of what we're seeing here, because those people are lazy and they can't figure out YouTube. But for those who are maybe they're driving.
I would love to hear a description of
so if we could just provide some descriptions here of what we're actually seeing, that would be great. And Steve, if you could take over here and basically show stuff from both of the Kickstarters, and then lead us into where these two Kickstarters actually cross over, which is
absolutely. So first here, the first image, Rich, that we've got is Stabberine. Which is a Wolverine adjacent Stabbity Bunny with the claws, with the I guess the classic or semi-classic brown and yellow suit.
It's the best suit, by the way.
The Stabbity Project Part 1. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a great image, and it's he's doing the sort of the berserker, like the Wolverine leaping pose.
Yes, it's the Jim Lee cover, right? That's the.
It is from.
Yeah, that's the burn. Isn't that the burn?
It's after Jim Lee. Yeah,
it's after Jim Lee.
Jim Lee. Yeah, it's we've got a number. I mean, we all have various degrees of key or certain cover memorization levels or whatever. But for those of you who are listening who know Wolverine 27, a certain percentage will be like, oh, it's that one. With the red, orange, and yellow background, the speed lines, and just the straight on Wolverine leaping towards you. But in this case, it's a bunny in a very similar outfit who is not in the same physical shape as Wolverine.
I was just going to say, I love that he's a little bit of a thicker bunny. He's a little
he's
thicker.
He's got some extra fluff.
He hasn't gone to the gym in a while, and it's
you don't get pecs like that from staying out of the gym.
No.
That's how he works out.
He just likes his carrot butter, and
he has a little bit extra carrot cake sometimes.
Yes,
and
perfect. And this one actually I really like because it's towards a more recent title, Absolute Superman, and this is Absolute Stabbity in the new sort of featuring a new version of the new Absolute Superman suit, glaring at the at the reader. And I'm not sure who did the original one because again, it's really recent for me. But this is just a great image. I really love this.
Yeah, Ryan,
all solid red background.
Ryan, Ryan just did that. It's like he's just like you're talking to him one moment, and maybe in the late at night, and then in the morning, just there you go. It's like, okay, well, Ryan, that's good to have that kind of that level of talent. That's awesome.
Yeah, where you can just like pound that out. Just that's great. So he did that.
Yeah,
it took him one day.
Yeah,
just doodling.
Yeah,
Jesus,
just doodling. There you go.
Life isn't fair.
Well, and then we've also got a beautiful Venom, homage here, where Stabbity is being completely overtaken by the symbiote with the Venom sharp teeth, but inside Venom's mouth, you can still see the two perfect Stabbity teeth, poking out there in the tongue. This is this image again. It's a relatively famous looking image. The red background and the very wet looking symbiote sort of splashing all over the face. But I mean, some really great ones here. The Iron Bunny, instead of
favorite
pastiche of Iron Man 128.
Demon in a
there
bomb.
He is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Demon.
Beautiful.
It's perfect. I also like the little detail here with the orange label Peter Cottontail whiskey.
That was
amazing.
First on the Venom one, that was Brian Silverbacks, and then Greg Kirkpatrick did the Iron Bunny one. And other than just kind of discussing in general that I wanted to make sure it was kind of carrot juice, etc. label, Greg Kirkpatrick came up with those exact details on there. And then Dwayne Biddix did the coloring on that.
Oh, nice.
So now we've got another version of this, which I didn't send yet because we're still kind of hashing it out a little bit. But it was a conversation with Andrea Lorenzo Molinari. He said, well, you know, Stabbity kind of has a demon thing going on. There could be an actual demon in the bottle kind of a thing. So there's another version of this, and Greg did the patch for us, so we can go back and forth. But there's going to be another version of this with no Iron Man helmet, no chest plate, just Stabbity. But there's a more arcane looking bottle, and if you're familiar with and that it was in Stabbity, spoiler alert, maybe looks, it's going to be that demon swirling around in there.
The cover looks good. It looks good. You guys are going to like it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it.
Don't tell Richard I told you that, though.
And this one, it's interesting because Ryan has Stabbity bursting through Ryan's first cover A for Stabbity Ever After.
Yeah, this was and here's sort of like a larger picture of it as well. You just without the border, but yeah, it's a really cute way of sort of paying homage to the original cover, but like just hey, we're remixing this. We are we're taking what we had done originally, and we're bursting through it. We're doing something different.
Yep.
So,
and
Richard, you had at least two covers there that were, well, three covers there that were, kind of homages of just classic covers. Are there any covers that you have not done, kind of iconic covers that you want to try to play with Stabbity in the future?
Yes.
Yes, thousands.
I'd say that the ones that probably I'll focus on that would be upcoming and it's a natural, and we haven't done it yet, but we should have, is a Roger Rabbit one.
Okay.
Posters. And then probably because to over explain a little bit, but like when I first had that Stabbity Bunny issue 1 coming out, I didn't want to hit Heroes Con with here's that comic and that's it. So we did like 10 or 15 posters that were either homages to other like Journey into Mystery 83, etc. Yeah. Or just ideas of this character reimagined with this. But even back then I was a little bit more of a purist because Stabbity Bunny was always just in his one pose. He doesn't move. So a lot of times it would be Stabbity maybe dressed up a little bit, but Grace having to do the acting out. So she was the female Thor, and he was kind of dressed as regular Thor, or their Saturday Night Fever poster, or their et cetera, et cetera. But one of the ones that I might like to revisit, and we did one with Galactus, and I don't know if it's been done before, and I wasn't aware of it. It's been done after, but I have Galactus, which he drew, Dwayne Biddix does incredibly well on the kind of classic Marvel, and we've got the planet Earth, and it's floating just halfway kind of in this cup, and you can't read it all, but it's planet smoothie. So Galactus is that with the Earth, but when you have Stabbity though as the Silver Surfer, so there's a few, I forget the exact numbers, like maybe FF55 or something like that, but there's one kind of reddish cover with all the planets and stuff in the background with the Silver Surfer, and there's another one with more of a brownish cover and Silver Surfer, but so possibly a Silver Bunny Surfer kind of a thing, and definitely the Roger Rabbit. And then I was talking to Ed Bickford, who's done a number of things recently. He's going to be collaborating soon with, I probably shouldn't say this, I don't know if that's official yet, but he mentioned that we hadn't done and we should do, because we've a Friday the 13th. So I kind of want to really dive maybe into a Friday the 13th. But again, now that I've moved off of the worrying it being so precise about Stabbity, as you can see, because he looked quite different in each of those covers. A Friday the 13th where we've got like the ears and they're scarred, and just really get into a Friday the 13th look for Stabbity. I mean, we've done Pinhead.
What about Friday the 13th?
I know you guys I know
Okay,
you guys don't owe me any favors, but what I really want for my birthday is for like Richard and Steph to team up and give me like the Jaws version of the Stabbity Bunny.
I was just gonna say,
yeah.
I need.
I've been watching Jaws behind Steph on the screen.
I know.
Amazing poster
It's one of
behind
many
her.
that I have.
I want to see the Stabbity Bunny Jaws homage. That needs to happen. That's metal.
If you were gonna ask me, I was gonna say we need the bunny in the water, and then we need like a family-friendly like swimmer. Yes, not swimming through the ocean.
And Steve, since we're kind of against the clock here, why don't you bring up some of the images for the Heirs of Isildur?
Yeah. And that's actually, I was going to go straight to that. So for Heirs of Isildur, we do have some images here for the Perilous Prospects, issue number 4. We've got first up here is cover A, Heed the Call.
So that one,
and this, yeah.
Oh, so that's some of the images. You've got a militia that's running wild through the town. Is that the town is starting to be overtaken from the skies above because of the portals that are unleashing this energy, and now the ground has started to open up, and there's like lava-like spires that are coming up out of the ground as well. So this cover has got some of the members of the militia that have started to confiscate different items from around the town, and they are going around with what's called the bugle horn, letting everybody know that there's something that they all need to do. And so this is done by our main artist, Alessandro Ventura, and our main colorist, Alan Emanuel. That's one of the images. We thought that was going to be a pretty iconic image because we have one of our crazy looking guys, Augustus Obergarten, wearing a mask to, keep himself away from getting any kind of contaminants as driving this motorbike that's got the little sidecar on it through the town.
Excellent. Yeah, I love the colors on that one. It's pretty striking. And then here we have cover B, which is the Looking Glass or homage cover by Emily Reesit. It looks like kind of references a certain wonderful land.
Exactly, it's Alice in Wonderland, The Looking Glass. It's based on the movie poster for the Looking Glass movie, and we like to make sure we have. Unlike Richard probably could get a medieval scroll and do like this of the different homages he's done. We probably like to have at least one per issue for the Perilous Prospects. For issue 1, we did Metalocalypse Death Clock. For issue 2, we did the Stranger Things season 4 poster. Nice. For issue 3, we did Nightmare Before Christmas. And then for this one, we did this poster. We also have Game of Thrones, a throne homage, and then we also have a lot of Garbage Pail Kid homages we've done previously as well. But this is the one we did for this one. Emily's a teen artist from this area who's done a lot of stuff for Orange Cone Productions, and she's actually done a cover for us before, and she does have another one on tap for us later on in the year. But we thought that she would be a really good artist to do this and really like the way this came out. And when we do the metal cover version of this one, all the mirrors in the background are going to be knocked out, so they actually are going to have the shiny metal mirror shining through.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, because there's all the clocks in the background. If you aren't familiar with the Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass Tim Burton film, it's all these clocks in the background. Just looks really cool. That's really neat. And then finally here we have cover D, which is the Realm of Terror cover. Also looks like a Ventura Emanuel collaboration here.
And so this one here is there's always certain images that we like to swerve people with. And this one here is just an iconic image that they drew that we thought would look really cool because the way that you've got, for those that are listening, you've got two pretty sinister looking individuals that are dragging another person somewhere. And the person who's getting dragged knows that it's probably going to be a not good situation. You can literally see where his fingers are literally putting ruts into the ground because he's trying to claw away from these guys. What this means, you have no idea what it means until you get into the issue, but the image just looks so cool. We're like, well, this has got to be on a cover for us. We do have one more cover that hasn't been revealed yet. That's actually for those of you watching. We're going to reveal that one tomorrow. For those of you that are listening, if the campaign's already launched, it'll be on there. It'll be there for a few days. We have a sister duo that we work with named Chess and Gwen that are incredible manga writing duo and writer artist duo, and they've got their next cover for us that's called Shattered Visions that's going to debut tomorrow. So that's going to be the 4th cover that we're going to have. We're really, really excited about that one.
And what about the crossover?
That sounds pretty awesome,
guys.
Oh, we do have that,
Yes.
and that I'm also really excited about. I did have one little thing, and Matt, you just sent this over to me, and I did want to pull up there because
Sure.
I mean, we love merch. We're
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We are
anything
big
that's
merch.
branded. Gimme. This is really cool. It's a merch reveal showing poker chips. We've got actual branded Heirs of Isildur poker chips here in various colors and styles.
Yeah, we are big. We are big on merch. We've had people say that they feel like our table at a show looks like a band merch table at a concert, because we've got we do shirts. One of the things we do a lot of socks. We've already done 6. We're about to have our 7th and our 8th different versions of branded socks. The socks for this campaign are actually going to look very similar to that. And if you're watching, we haven't even revealed the sock yet. So people didn't even know there was going to be socks. So whoop, I guess I just let the cat out of the bag. But we've had leather workers that we've worked with a lot that have done actually branded leather work, pouches and wearables and masks. Richard at one point actually had one of the branded dragon masks that we did with Tales from Nocturnia. But yes, we do have some Heirs of Isildur branded poker chips. We also showed the poker chips we did for Tales from Nocturnia. We've actually had people come up to us. I had 2 different people come up to me on Black Friday. One of them actually deals poker, and he said, I would use these chips on my table. The other one was a magician who bought a bunch of poker chips, and he was literally sitting at the table doing like this. And he was like, these things feel really good. He's like, can I buy some of these and use these in my street magic? And I'm like, hell yeah, man. I'm like, of course, man. We would like, why would I tell you no? That's ridiculous. Yes, do that. But yes, we're big on having fun merch like that, because we want the stuff to extend out past the pages. We've done colored vinyl of our albums and things like that. We do all kinds of stuff like that.
Very cool.
And that's it's interesting because it's different. A lot of people don't usually equate that with comics, but hey, people have been putting comics on anything from bed sheets to toothbrushes for at least 75 years, 80 years. So, I mean, why not poker chips? Socks, which is awesome. Albums. And of course, this is really cool. It is a collaboration between both the Stabbity Bunny Kickstarter and the Heirs of Isildur Kickstarter. And that is the metal trading card promo. If you guys wanted to talk about that, how do we get those?
So we've always wanted to do something that was a legitimate front of house, basically collaboration with Richard. We do a lot of stuff in the background. Richard's been drawn into some of our issues. Richard, I didn't even tell you this before, but you're actually drawn into one of our stories that you didn't even know about. And you'll find out about it later, but there's another story of ours you're drawn into, which is actually kind of cute. But one of the things we know that there's always power in teamwork and power in numbers when it comes to Kickstarters. And Steph and I have done a lot of Kickstarters where we've had collaborations with other people, and we wanted to do a collaboration with Richard. And the original thought was that we would just have a piece of art that combined the two things. And we wanted to do it, say, like on a metal cover. And Richard, in his infinite wisdom, was like, I think I have a good idea. What do you think about if we make it a 3 trading card set, and you guys have card 1 and Stabbity Bunny has card 3. And if you back both campaigns, that's the only way you can get that middle second card. And I was like, well, if we do this, that middle card has to be an incredibly important thing that people are going to want. And the only thing that is going to be that important is to have the actual bunny from Stabbity Bunny be the middle card. I don't care that that's not our title. I'm like, you got to have, that's right. See the bunny heart you're talking about.
Bunny.
So you've got Michael Isildur from Heirs of Isildur on card 1. You've got Grace from Stabbity Bunny on card 3, both trying to save the bunny from this out of control portal in the middle. The art was done by a local artist here named Just Josh Draws, hashtag Just Josh Draws, Josh Menendez, who did our strangest homage cover. And Richard, what do you think? Did Josh do a good job on this art, or what?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And he was great. I mean, he's showing us, the roughs and the steps as he went through, and definitely made it incorporated everything and made it better than we thought it could be.
And one of the things we wanted to really make sure of, and Steph, you've seen it as well when we do campaigns, you get a lot of, oh, you can get this print and this little thing in a 5x7 print, and we're not downing those things because we've done them before as well. But a lot of those things just kind of like stay in with the comic and they don't come out and they don't really go anywhere because you don't feel like you've gotten yourself a collectible. And so that's why we wanted to do the metal trading cards, which are not cheap, but we felt like if somebody's going to go to the trouble of physically backing Heirs and physically backing Stabbity Bunny, or a Stabbity Bunny fan is going to basically jump across the aisle to back us or vice versa. We wanted to give both sides something that was going to be valuable and something they would want to like put up on a shelf or put a little display up and have all three of them out there. No, look, there's not a whole lot of people in this world that have got all three of these really cool collectibles together. And we always want there to be quality. And I think that's what we're going to have.
Have to back both campaigns to get it. One of the things I love, though, is look how happy the bunny still looks. He still looks so cute and happy.
He always looks happy to be here, even if he's going to be, ripping apart like a, a thug.
He's being sucked into
really...
a portal. It's okay. He's still happy.
Yes.
Well, I really liked it because it's not like it's a tiny bonus, because if you back one campaign, you only get one card.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you back both campaigns, you get 3 cards.
Yeah.
It's no small incremental increase. It's like you get 2/3 of it by supporting the other campaign.
And you're going to want all 3 because otherwise you just get, one half is really cool, but you're going to want the whole set because that's what makes it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, in terms of points of contact, naturally on our resources, we'll be posting the links to the Kickstarter campaigns. But in terms of other points of contact on the interwebs, where would people go to find your stuff?
I'll go first because it looked like Richard was kind of waiting for us to go. So if you go to linktree.com/Insymmetry Creations, that's INSYMMETRY Creations. We've got a whole host of different links there for all of our different titles. We have a Substack blog called the Blog of Destiny, where Steph and I will, sometimes it'll be just news about the things that are going on with our titles. Sometimes there'll be columns. We did end of year articles with Steph's favorite audiobooks. I did some with my favorite or most notable metal music from 2024. We have links to our different music, to the videos, some of the music videos that are up there. And we try to make sure everything is there. So we have our hands in so many different things. I'm also a panel host and MC. I've done a lot of shows with interviewed a lot of celebrities. And so you might want to see the pictures or see some of the videos of some of those. We make sure all those things are linked up there so you can get the whole cross section of what Insymmetry Creations is all about.
Excellent.
Cool. And Richard?
I hesitate to say for the following reasons. Well, StabbityBunny.com right now is like a 10 or 11-year-old site with no updates for the last 5 or 6 years. However, we are making a new one right now. We just haven't redirected to it yet. So at some point, hopefully in the near future, I would go to StabbityBunny.com. You can go there now just for, this is the way it used to be, eh? But otherwise, Stabbity Bunny, as far as like Stabbity Bunny Facebook, it is that. Stabbity Bunny on Insta or Stabbity Bunny, and Stabbity has 2 B's if that helps. Even on, there's still, though I haven't been there in so long, there's something on X still. We need to expand and get into a few other of the socials there, but for the most part, we got the most followers right now still on Facebook.
Okay.
But I think what you're saying, Richard, is because it's the most updated thing, you want people to go to tinyurl.com/Stabbity EA1 because that's got the most up-to-date information on Stabbity Bunny and Stabbity Ever After.
There you go. Thank you.
Great. Well, I am certain we could talk about a lot of other things. Steph, just looking at the poster behind you, a friend of mine is trying to get me back into local theater. So I did say, if you can get the rights to The Shark is Broken, I will direct that.
Oh my gosh.
So-
It is like a bucket list item for me to go and see
Yeah.
that. It was in New York for a little while, but
Yeah,
I'm
I
in
saw it.
California.
Yeah.
So I have to either make it to New York or London. And then I think that they're going to it's going to come back.
Yeah, there is a tour, and I think that's going to be April to August, and that's going to hit like a lot of other areas.
I know. And I have to see Ian Shaw play.
Yeah.
Robert.
And
So,
I
yeah,
could
I
could talk Jaws till the cows come home, and Jaws 2 has its merits.
It's crazy. Like I saw a video of him, and I'm like, it's like his father, like possessed him. He sounds just like him. It's insane.
It's
So,
crazy.
so I think something that he really would be interested in. So we have a character in Misfits Clubhouse that is a slight homage. Actually, it's not even homage. Steph's got a stuffed animal or a stuffed shark in her
It's a
room
shark, yeah.
named
It's a stuffed
Bruce.
shark.
And so we have a character in Misfits Clubhouse called Bruce McTutherson, Aquatic Investigator. And so Bruce McTutherson, Aquatic Investigator, who does not just have shirts, literally holding the Bruce McTutherson socks right here.
Boy, oh boy.
This is what you get when you.
This is what you get. This is what you get with us.
That's so great. Well, Richard, Steph, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. Best of luck with success with the Kickstarter.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that's a foregone conclusion, given the content that we've been privy to tonight. So thank you again for coming on, and hopefully it won't be the only time.
Yeah,
absolutely. We'll be happy to get back anytime.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right.
Awesome. That was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I loved it. I love that.
Yeah.
Richard's always a good time. I mean, like every time he comes on, he just makes me happy.
Yeah. And also for people who are listening or watching, I wholeheartedly suggest that you look at our older episodes, the one where Richard talked about Emmett's story, which was another Stabbity Bunny one shot. That is definitely worth your time.
Oh yeah,
definitely worth your time.
It's very, very emotional. It's interesting, when you're reading Stabbity, it's like the story is really great. There's a lot of really great sort of twists and turns and very gothic nature of it. But Emmett's story it feels very personal. It's kind of like a breather from the main story, but it really ties into everything.
Yeah,
there's a lot of personal, feel to that and emotions.
Yeah.
Well, and shout out to our friends that I'd never met them before tonight, but our friends over at Symmetry. It's really neat that they've created this little indie grindhouse studio.
Yeah,
like, that's really cool. On
really
separate
cool.
coast.
Yeah.
Like
when Matt was mentioning that there's a URL code that can go directly to music right within the books. And
I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm like, that's what I want comics that bring in these other elements and stuff. And the fact that they've done that, and like I said, they're not just one. I mean, but they've created this little catalog of titles that you can get. Like that's really that's laborious, right? Like that's tough, and they've done it. That's awesome.
And that's really cool. Because we're always interested in the nexus between music and comics.
Mm-hmm.
And just going to music artists that even artists I don't like, but if there's an element where it's not just the music, I'm there. And I don't care whether that's Frankie Goes to Hollywood or Throbbing Gristle or Lady Gaga, where there is a dynamic where it's not just the music. To me, those are some of the most interesting acts on the planet. And it sounds like what you have there is very much a comic book equivalent, between the poker chips and the other and vinyls. It just sounds great. Yeah, I'm really interested in checking that out, and that there is this crossover promotion between the two in terms of incentives. that's a no-brainer, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
what it feels like. Oh yeah, what it feels like to me is like when you go to a convention, and this is again one of the best things about a comic book convention. You get those tables where you have different artists, different creators that really mesh, that really kind of enjoy each other's company and enjoy each other's work so much that they're like, hey, next year, why don't we get together and collaborate on something and just like, get our tables close together. And so if people come and visit us, they get to experience both of our work in a way that kind of mixes them together. A nice remix, like we talked about with Stabbity Ever After, just being able to do something fun like that. And I think this is really cool. Kickstarter being able to, be that platform for this type of collaborative work is great.
Yeah. Well, fellas, we made it to 300 episodes.
300. 300. Actually, we had some comments here. David Hazan popped up. Happy 300.
David,
thank you so much,
talking
David.
about other favorite past guests. So.
Oh yeah, and we'll definitely have David on again in the future too, which is awesome. James Figueredo, we have a full house today. Good evening, everybody. He popped in right as we had all 6 of us. I think is that the most that we've ever had on the show at one time?
I think so. I was once on the Movie Bears where there were 7 or 8 people.
That's all.
Oh yeah,
and that was too much. And one guy was not cool.
And who is this person? Let's name some names.
I don't. It wasn't Chris Lopez. I can tell you that.
We also had Daniel Williamson pop in. Congrats on 300 episodes, Bears. Here's to the next 300 with a cute little waving guy. Thank you so much, Daniel.
And look at Steve. Look at Steve with the beginnings of gray in the beard there.
I see.
I've had the gray. The gray's been there.
That's more. There's more of it now, though.
It's more groomed now.
Okay.
I mean, the past 4 weeks weren't that stressful, but yeah, I think it's a little bit.
It looks really good.
Cleaned up a bit.
Your haircut looks really good.
It suits you. It really does. Yeah.
I asked my
nice cut.
my
you
stylist.
got a nice cut. Because we're so used to the Jufro at points.
Where it just gets everywhere and you can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
My haircut just looks. I don't know how we describe what's happening up here with me right now. There's no.
Just want to run my hands through it.
Well, I'm at that like it's long enough to part, but it's I don't know. I'm so weird with
just
my
parted in the middle. Do an alfalfa sprout.
But it's it's winter, so this is coming in, and I might be Kenny again. I might be Kenny Rogers again.
Like if I dyed it blonde, I would look like that dude who tried to take over the Incredibles. Like what's
Can we talk about your shirt there? I sweat rainbow. Yes.
It's got a unicorn flexing on it. It's a sleeveless shirt as I'm wont to do.
And Steve, what is your shirt? I can't make it out.
My shirt is 3 bears. Basically, it's pretty much we 3 bears, or actually we 2 bears on an ice cream cone. So it's like vanilla on the top and chocolate on the bottom.
So it's just a couple of bears stacked up on top of each other, getting sticky.
Okay.
Just a bear pile. There's some chocolate sauce involved. With
a cherry on top.
And
cherry on top.
I have a Retro Bad Company hoodie on.
I love it.
So,
I like that shirt. That's a really cool shirt.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I didn't spend a lot of money on it. $2.
Hey, that's a really great shirt. It really is.
Yeah, it's from Wrangler. It's actually from Wrangler.
Really?
They've some cross promotion with some Axe.
Yeah,
and Bad Company was one of them. So, yeah.
Oh, hold on. James, thank you so much. Oh, the haircut looks great, Steve. Thank you, James. I'm gonna boost my ego with that. But does this mean you get a hair and makeup budget for the next 300 episodes?
Yeah. I also have to say something about James. We had that question about how you initially got into comics and stuff. James had that. I had never heard of this because I don't think many people had out of Brazil, outside of Brazil. But his was a children's comic called Monica's Gang, and I was fascinated reading about Monica's Gang.
Awesome.
It sounds like a really cool children's property. So I always remember that when we had James on about how he first got in. So
I always feel that we do miss out on a lot of, like European properties were the same way too. I mean, the UK, like the UK version of Dennis the Menace, and just a lot of like the French Lucky Luke. I mean, it's a cowboy comic that's just been running for decades and is super popular in French-speaking countries, but in the US,
you hear about it you get into Britain. There's one, can't call it soccer, football strip called Roy of the Rovers that gone on for ages, and like, would we ever hear this stuff? We'll hear about Judge Dredd, but will we hear about
because it's more adult and like all that stuff, and Metal Hurlant obviously had a cult following here, and like the English equivalent of heavy metal, but I
wonder what the first one I probably Tintin. That was outside. I guess you characterize Smurfs with Peyo as a strip, or I'm not sure what form that took. Barbarella, Barbarella, in the 60s,
Barbarella too.
Yeah,
I think the Smurfs was probably a big European property, but I'm sure that most kids were more familiar with the cartoon first and then the comics, because they did publish the comics.
Well, actually, how I first became familiar with the Smurfs, and this was well before the series, was they had these plastic figures that were imported that you could only get in head shops. And my local head shop had all these Smurfs in a case.
How old were you going?
Some paraphernalia and some Smurfs.
Well, one of the stores, World Import, in the Bergen Mall in Paramus, I was going into there from 12 years old, because it was like, a rock store, like rock posters and thing. And then you would go in the back and they wouldn't let kids in the back. And this is like, how like, it wasn't like you hit 1980 and like automatically the 70s were over. They had like those beaded carpet, the beaded like separators,
that
drink.
Satisfying clicky sound.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Yeah. But
Asterix, James reminded
yeah.
me. Yes, Asterix is known, but it's not popular in the US, unfortunately. Like there's a lot of Asterix stuff that you can get, but it's obscure. I think still most people wouldn't know about. And we even had a couple of the movies, the live action Gérard Depardieu movies that were terrible, but that did kind of make their way over. But
that's kind of an interesting concept, and I wonder if you would agree with what I'm about to say. It's almost, during modern times, it seems like it's easier for like a manga property to cross over in the US than it is for a European property to cross over.
Oh, absolutely.
That's very interesting.
I think because there is a built-in audience that is continually fortified. Whereas you don't have that with some others.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like we don't have that built-in European audience, but we do have the built-in Japanese audience, which is interesting. I mean, like historically, why is it the Japanese media coming over here that really hits it big, whereas the European media coming over here not so much? It's either niche or cult or like really small. Yeah. Whereas manga, they publish it over in Japan, we get it a week later in the US, translated already. For a lot of
and it is strange. I mean, look, over time, like in Italy, there's a cowboy strip, Tex Willier, that has gone on for decades, and I don't think I've ever seen anything over here. You know about it because if if you're reading about the history of comics, it is interesting, but some stuff permeates.
James, the U.S. has been repackaging Super Sentai for U.S. audiences since the 90s. That might have helped. Yeah, but before that, I mean, we had
Akira,
so many manga shows, mecha shows from the...
What?
Akira was the first big crossover book, wasn't it?
Well, no, because if you go back, in the 60s.
You got Astro Boy.
You had Speed Racer, you had Gigantor.
Johnny Sacco.
And then continuing into the 70s with Battle of the Planets and Star Blazers.
Yeah. Okay.
There was stuff. I think, from my perspective, the first manga that I think really hit in a big way in the States was, I don't know, like I think it probably was Akira. That probably was the first one.
Yeah.
You know, Lone Wolf and Cub, I think
Lone Wolf and Cub
was a little more niche. Whereas I think Akira had, because first Akira had a hell of a movie behind it. You know,
yeah.
It had a hell of a movie, and the live action Lone Wolf and Cub movies are great too, but I don't think that. I just felt that it was a bit more niche than
I think
the appeal.
I think
of
with Lone Wolf and Cub, they had an interesting advantage because of how it was being put out, where it was a little bit more visible, for most.
Well, I think with Akira, I mean, Marvel published Akira for a time.
Yeah, and James even mentions that just now.
Yeah,
Lone Wolf was first comics. I know Dark Horse eventually.
Well, yeah, and I think the first publisher. I'm trying to think what the.
So the versions I have is Dark Horse. They're the ones that have Miller cover.
I'm trying to think who was the publisher that put the Psychic Girl and Area 88 and the Legend of Kumai.
That might have been First Comics, like James had mentioned. Yeah, it might have been first.
It's definitely not first. It's definitely not first.
Because I also have Area 88. I remember when that started coming out. I can check.
I'm looking at it right now.
But yeah, the
Eclipse.
Yeah, Eclipse. They also had the Robotech. They had a Robotech license.
Yeah, and
Eclipse didn't have Robotech. That was Kamiko.
Oh, okay, that's right. Kamiko had that.
Kamiko had.
I thought Eclipse also had, because
Robotech went from Kamiko to
who had Captain Harlock.
Okay, Captain Harlock's a really interesting story because that was published by the overall publisher was Malibu.
Yeah.
Before they started with and they would put him in different like publisher names like Adventure and Eternity. They didn't actually have the license when they published Harlock in the States, so those are all like unofficial. Yeah.
Viz Comics.
Viz Comics.
Yeah.
They're like the big daddy of all.
And also, it was also very Americanized in they didn't go backwards to backwards to the front.
Mm-hmm.
It was flipped. Which
I
think for Area 88 made some like really weird choices.
Is there kind of like in a alternate dimension where instead of having manga and anime just kind of become this giant wave from on the other side of the Pacific, and now becoming so established that manga consistently sells, much more in some markets than American comics?
Yeah.
What if in the alternative world it was?
I don't think there's a comic creator alive that wouldn't want One Piece numbers.
Oh, Oda's made more money.
I don't think there's a comic creator alive that would say no to that.
Oda's not in comparison with a comic creator alive today. Oda's in comparison with Walt Disney. Like that's where he's at as far as you can't walk through Japan or most Asian countries without just seeing One Piece everywhere, and it's getting to be where you can't walk anywhere in the U.S. without seeing it in many places. Like it is everywhere.
I hate One Piece.
Who's that weird guy with the straw hat? Like
I tried.
Yes.
I don't like pirates. I'm not crazy about pirates.
I've read some of the manga, and I enjoy the manga. I tried the animated anime. Not get roasted. Tried the anime, and it's fun. It's long, but like the live action was phenomenal. And the live action,
I've heard that that's the one.
Yeah, the live action.
I like the
I want to go and try to reread the manga and read it more. But actually, what happened there is I started reading that and realized I'd just rather read Dragon Ball. So I started reading Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. So
I really
you don't really read that. You just kind of flip the pages, and it's like a flip book action.
Right.
I really got into Attack on Titan when it started, but then it just felt like the story just went in a circle. Yeah. It felt like it went nowhere.
Well, since we're talking about manga, You know, everybody knows
unexpectedly. Yeah.
everybody knows that my favorite long form manga, well, really, one of my favorite long form stories of all time, period, is Lone Wolf and Cub. Do you guys have a favorite manga?
Yeah, Kikaida.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
And like I've never even gone through the entire Tokusatsu. I can never pronounce it right. The live action show. Tokusatsu. I see. I always drop an S somewhere there. But when DC had CMX imprint, that was one of the titles, and I that just blew me away. That I would have to say that's my favorite.
Awesome.
Yeah.
For me, really don't have a favorite. I think I read a lot of Sailor Moon when it was being published, like when it was just. I don't want to say when it just came out because I'm not that cool. But when it had,
I liked it before.
When it was. I did it before it was cool. Like I did it before you knew that. But yeah, no, I read it a lot in high school, and the reason I found out about it, of course, was when they first started showing the Deke version of the animated series, and so I was able to go and find original Japanese prints of the manga, and I was taking Japanese at the time, so it was actually like I felt like it was cool. It was good for me to get a study aid that was fun to read, and they're great
for education.
Yeah, but they hold up. Like they're good comics. Yeah. They're good. Like it's good stories. The art's really fun, and it gives you a lot of romance, but also some cool action and some interesting, convoluted fairy tale sci-fi, backstory for everybody. It's nice.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to shift from overseas comics to, I think, in all cases, are domestic comics for our choices here. So we're going to start with Caleb, because Caleb probably has the book with the most marquee value.
Yes.
Both Caleb and I have DC books we're going to talk about, and then we'll go into the indie world with Steve. So, Caleb, why don't you talk us through the first book the book you want to talk about? Because
I have to go first. There's so much pressure. Okay, so I took the last 2 weeks of the year off, which is crazy for me because so up until the 1st of December, I did not know how much leave time I had left. I got called into HR and was just chit-chatting with her. She's like, by the way, you're in trouble. And I was like, why is HR getting on to me? And she's like, you've taken 2 days off this entire year. You're taking time off. So I was like, okay. So I took some time off and I got a bunch of stuff read. And just to flip through some titles real quick, got caught up on, Namor, got caught up on Scarlet Witch, got caught up on World's Finest. Just read a whole bunch of stuff, read a bunch of old Submariner books, got caught up on a bunch of Image stuff. But there's one series that there's multiple series right now that are amazing. I'm not saying there's only one good comic or anything, but there's one that I am just really enjoying, and week to week continues to just go in strange and fun places and defy expectations. And Bill actually said something, and again, because I believe in connective continuity and serendipity and all that fun stuff, Bill made a comment earlier. It's neat how music plays into comics, and we like when there's that overlap. And the comic I'm going to talk about does that, and it's Wonder Woman 15. This is just. It's obviously it's Tom King's run. He's getting his crack at Diana, and I've said it before. I'm a big fan of Tom King. Some of his books are better than others. He does run the gamut, but I like most of what he does. And when he just breaks into it, it just works no matter what character he is, and he's writing, and he writes it from a very often an angle that you would not particularly expect. Like he brings things to characters in fun way. I mean, the guy made Kite Man cool, so he found a way to make Kite Man break your heart. But so it's Tom King doing the writing on this, Daniel Simperi doing the art, Tomu Mori on the colors, and Clayton Cowles on the letters. This is the beginning of a new story arc that is going to wrap up the overarching theme of Diana facing this clandestine, nefarious, deep state group called the Sovereign, and the Sovereign has put Diana through some stuff. Now, I mean, look, if you ask me what my favorite DC character is, I'm going to say Wonder Woman. I love George Perez. I love Phil Jimenez. There's been there are some iconic runs on this. There's also been a lot of Wonder Woman that is just like, ooh, but this is fantastic, guys. Like, I don't know how else to say it. This is really, really great. Diana's in a position right now where she has experienced a lot of loss. Her mother has ascended to the realm of the gods, and so she doesn't have access to her anymore. Things are weird in Themyscira. And then if you've been keeping up with this, and a little bit of spoilers, right? But Steve Trevor's dead. And Steve Trevor is dead because of things that happen with the Sovereign. And so Diana's at this weird mix of loss and grief and getting out for revenge. She's also at this place where, due to geopolitical things, Themyscirans can't come into U.S. soil. They've been permabanned from U.S. soil, which is, where does Diana do her work at most of the time? It's, all over the galaxy. Yeah. But I mean, she does a lot of work with Batman, and, all of her friends are in the U.S. to some degree, Superman and stuff. So kind of this rocked back on her heels point of view. But I think in this arc, they're going to get her back on her footing and really launch her forward. This issue really starts to focus on the fact that Diana has built a family of her own to some degree over the years. I mean, she's got all of her, I don't even think it's fair to call them sidekicks. I don't really know how you would, the characters that follow her mantle. She's obviously got Donna Troy. There is Cassie, and then
it is much more like a sisterhood.
It is, yeah. It's gone beyond sidekick.
Yeah.
Excuse me. To each of these characters have their. It's kind of the Nightwing thing. Nightwing's his own person, but also they very much still connected to that world, and they are taking it to the Sovereign. They are tired, and they are going to break this organization. Also, while this is happening, in her grief, Diana has, done something similar to what her mother did as far as George Perez is concerned. And Diana's created life. Diana has made a baby out of sand, out of clay and dirt, and brought this baby to life and is mothering and nurturing this child. And in a bit, it's kind of a mixture of her grief and her soul and Steve Trevor. It's the closest they've had to having a child. At least that's the way I interpret it. And this is driving her to really decide to, hey, let's go break this organization. So this story, it takes a nursery rhyme that we have, I think most people have heard and, grew up with, or at least I know it. I remember my grandmother singing this to me. Obviously it was different when my grandmother was singing it versus what's in here, but it's the nursery rhyme about, I think used to, it was 5 little Indians jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head, but this is 5 little princesses or 3 little princesses, and it counts down, and it shows all of Diana's, again, these people that she's built, the sisterhood that follows her mantle, and they're all on little submissions to go in. And so the Sovereign has got a lot of its capital on a floating armada, and Cassie just wrecks it and sinks this battleship that was automated and held a lot of their money, like a lot of their gold stacked up in this thing, and just destroys it. At the same time, Cheetah is tracking down a corrupt senator and has lured the corrupt senator to the bedroom under nefarious purposes. And I'm reading this, and there's some allusions that Tom King is making with it, as to what he thinks this corrupt politician thinks he's walking in on in this hotel room, as far as somebody he's expecting to meet, who has maybe some differences. He sets it up to where basically this corrupt politician, probably a conservative politician, is paying for sex with a trans woman, or at least thinks he is. And then that's not what he finds. He finds a very sharp-clawed cheetah in the room. And, Donna Troy is tracking down a priceless gem that's buried in the gullet of I'm not going to spoil it. I get we might, Bill.
Please don't spoil it.
Okay, yeah. This gem is buried.
You've already spoiled something for me. So.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize you hadn't read this yet.
I'm only up to issue 9.
Oh, no. Okay. I won't.
It's okay. It's okay.
But so, yeah, there's all of these things, and they are going to break this organization that has caused Diana so much grief. And that's the overarching story, right? Like they've all done these little missions, and they've got this code word. They tap in when they've completed their mission, and they say, this princess has bumped her head, and it moves on. The book is so fun because one of the neat things that Tom King, and he's done this before, I've seen him do this in other work, he will use songs that and he'll lay them out in the panels. And because your brain wants to read it, Tom King is literally controlling the speed with which you read it, because you're reading it as you would sing it in your head. So Tom King is taking and manipulating you as the reader and making you read this story in the cadence of what that song is. And it does this really interesting effect. And I think that's purposeful. And I've heard him kind of allude to that. And, he's got his craft down so good to be able to kind of understand what the reader is going to do. That's a really cool literary trick that he's doing to match the visual, to bring an audible sensibility to a visual medium, is just incredible. Yara Flor is obviously in this, and she is just doing amazing things. That is one of my favorite new characters of the last couple of years.
That's one thing I have to say is for a character that's, there was a lot of fanfare when she came out.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of just drizzled away. I think Tom King has a very distinctive voice for her, and that's really nice to see. And Cassie as well. I love his take on Cassie.
Oh, I do too. He's brought all of them and really given them such a personality. I mean, and the seeds of those personalities were there. He hasn't made them into something they weren't, but he's elevated that persona. He's given them a sensibility to their character that I don't know that had existed, or at least had been really built in the way that he has. And he also gives them, they're not in the shadow of Diana, at least I don't think, right? Like, I don't feel that way. He gives them their own legs to stand on.
Yeah.
Brings them out.
And particularly the dialogue between them is it's just spot on. Again, I'm at a handicap because I'm 6 issues behind.
Okay.
But that's one thing I also took away is I just love how he presents their interactions.
And
it's dialogue that really rings true with women who know each other, and very well,
and feed off of each other, right? They and this is one of the things I was talking about. Like I said, in the story where they're taking, and Steve's showing it up now, it's showing one of the pages where it's showing Diana holding this baby that she's brought into the world, and she's singing to it. 5 little princesses jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped her head, and you can see from the page that's what I'm talking about. You're singing it in your head as you're reading it, and it controls the speed with which you read this book. And I think that's not everyone can do that. I don't think, and that's done really well here. And I mean, it's only made better by the art. This is absolutely gorgeous line work. The color theory is spectacular. The light shining through the columns of where Diana is, of Themyscira, just really bring an ambiance to this. But it's not necessarily a healthy situation. Like, they're doing this really cool thing where you're like, okay, but there's something intimidating behind this. Like, there's something about this that's not right, and they're able to slide that through. In any other situation, a woman holding a baby in the sunlight of columns would be just really sweet moment, and it is. But there's also this through line of, okay, something's wrong here. Mm-hmm. And they're doing an incredible job of illustrating that, of showing what it, where these people are holding space in their heads to think about and trying to really accomplish. I can't say what they are, but the pages in this story of Donna Troy's battle in this single issue are freaking amazing. Everything from, like, there's some water involved in the texture of the splashing and stuff, and another, for DC fans, a cadence, a rhyme, if you will go in there, and you'll recognize it. So, read Wonder Woman right now. It's absolutely stunning. I love it. I think it's next level. It's good to see Tom King plan on writing a longer story than 12 issues. He's the master of 12 issue series, but he's taking the stance that he did on Batman. He told us he was going to write 100 issues of Batman, and overall he did. I know he got kicked off the main title for a couple of reasons, but he's saying he's going to 100 issues with this, and I hope he does, because Wonder Woman is really good right now, and that makes me very happy.
All right, cool.
We've got a couple comments real quick. Not followed. Cheetah's on Diana's side now, says Victor.
Yeah,
Rose.
it's very frenemy kind of vibe, but they have a common interest. Let's put it that way.
So kind of like Cheetah's eating people's faces party of one. And then James, of course, they respond. She's been written in kind of a gray area where she's not 100% a villain, and this one has been playing her pretty much like this.
Yeah, and that was you know, the first time I think they did that was well, there were elements in Perez's run, but
they showed her being a broken person.
I really liked her as a quasi-hero in that Final Crisis crossover. I thought that was really well done. Where she was just much more. She actually found she was comfortable being a heroine, and I liked it there. Yeah.
DC's really good about taking these female villains and then giving them, like I said, they're not justifying some of the bad things that they've done, but they're saying, hey, this is the reason, you know, desperate people in desperate situations, and you know, these are broken people. You know, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and they're doing something similar with Cheetah to that, where they're giving her something to hold on to.
Yes, absolutely. Rucka's second run. Yep. Absolutely.
Greg Rucka's second run worked really hard to redeem Cheetah, says James. And
was that the absolute?
No, that was Rucka's second run was Rebirth.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Remember where it would go back and forth between time and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, whether it was
really
a Sharp or a Nicola Scott issue. You know.
Well, because in that run, Cheetah, I think, was one of the first people to actually befriend Wonder Woman when she came over to the US in that one, I think, right? And look in the flashback parts.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah.
And there's a lot of like
a little fuzzy. I'll defer to James.
I do want to
go ahead.
I was gonna say I do want to say one thing though, just because you know this is a queer comic book podcast, and you know we're queer men who talk about these things. I did make I happened to stumble. I was looking up some stuff about the book and just to see if I could find some reviews. I didn't know who had done what, just to check out what people were saying about it. And I stumbled in the wrong corner of the internet, and I was really disappointed by. Well, but here's why it was surprising. I was really disappointed by what I saw, because it was a bunch of people who were, you look at their profile pictures or whatever, and they're all rainbow flags and very queer friendly, and they're talking about, they're basically lambasting this book because Diana and Steve Trevor are a couple and have a relationship. And I'm reading this, I'm like, guys, bisexual women are still bisexual even if they're with men. Like it's like I don't understand why people don't realize that. Like you're not a bisexual woman when you're with a woman, but straight when you're with a man, you're still a bisexual person. Yeah. And it was really disappointing to see folks that are at least purporting to be in our camp of things really engaging in some really disgusting bi erasure and just deciding, because she has feelings for a man, that she's not a member of the queer community, and that erases her queerness, because it doesn't. Those relationships are still valid, and especially with character that has that history in the way that they do, in that long history that they do.
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't. It was very disappointing. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that from just kind of a culture aspect, but that has nothing to do with what's inside this book, which is phenomenal and should be read.
Okay. The book I was going to talk about initially was a Tom King book as well, was Jenny Sparks.
Nice.
I also didn't want to have a 7-hour show. And I also have to say, for those of us that buy DCBS, how wonderful are these little trays?
I love them.
Oh my God. I
love the trays. Love them.
I love them so much. It's just so great for, like, if it's in that tray, I've got to read it, that kind of stuff. But I decided to talk about a book that was one of the ones that surprised me the most, because I associate this character so distinctly with one particular creator, which is who we just mentioned, Greg Rucka, with Renee Montoya. But The Question, All Along the Watchtower, man, this was a really good first issue. And the reference to All Along the Watchtower, it's not just to the Dylan song, it's literally to the Justice League Watchtower. So what's going on here? One thing I'm really liking in this post All In, now that they've instituted the Justice League United concept, and basically everybody's a member of the Justice League, a lot of the core activity is happening on the Watchtower, and the Trinity has noticed that somebody's been trying to hack in, and they think this might be a very big deal. And who did they decide to effectively make the sheriff, as Diana puts it, of the Watchtower? Renee Montoya, given her background as a police officer and also her background as the weirdo conspiratorial entity that is known as the Question throughout. So in this story, she is tasked to become an investigator and try to get to the bottom of why somebody is trying to hack in. And what really threw her was, it seemed, a genuine concern and almost fear from Superman about how this could happen. So they put a team together for her, and it's a pretty interesting team. You have both Blue Beetles, you have both Ted, and you have Jaime. There is a menagerie, a zoo within the Watchtower that is overseen by Animal Man, and one of the other people working there is Mr. Talkie Tawny. That was just so great. They also extend that to some minor characters, like Ken Kawa, who is one of the more recent challengers of the Unknown. And last but certainly not least, Steve, if you can go to another graphic there, we can show. We'll go back to this one, but if you can show the next one, Kate Kane, her ex Batwoman. And these are two characters that have a history, and the first issue was a bit exposition heavy, but a lot of first issues are. I'm not going to damn an entire run because there's a lot of terrain that needs to be covered within the first 22 pages so that people come back for the next 22 and the next 22 and the next 22. So I'm not going to fault the book for that, though it is one issue where I think it could have been a little more refinedly edited. But Steve, if you can go back to graphics there. So the person that is actually doing the hacking is an old Superman, but actually should more be characterized as an old Clark Kent villain in Conduit. Now, Conduit's not exactly an A-lister. So how he was able to do this, and as you see there, he's taken out Nightshade, he's taken out Hawk, he's taken out Fire very, very quickly. There's something bigger behind this, and that is made most graphically apparent in the last page where one of the members of her team is found murdered. So we have the landscape. What I thought was wonderful about this is this notion of the need for a Justice League so that absolute power does not happen again, is running through many of the books. It's running through Superman. It's running through Black Lightning. It's core. This continues with this. And I also like that there's sort of nods to the animated series. Justice League Unlimited, of the Watchtower, which was the nexus of their activity, and that the challengers of were effectively working the station. I mean, there's a lot of little Easter eggs pulled throughout. But one of the things I thought that was best was this was the Renee Montoya I know. Yeah. Though it was not Rucka's pen to paper on this is definitely her. Now, the writer is Alex Segura, who is mostly well known as being editor-in-chief at Archie for a number of years, and has written a couple of one-offs here and there, shorter run stories like the Green Lantern Night Terror stories. So this is his first for DC that's extended. That we are getting 6 issues out, and the artist is Cian Torme, and I think it's an Irish artist that I think first really came to prominence after he replaced John Timms in Superman Son of Kal-El series. So I don't know if Cian is a queer creator, but after John Kent and then into Alan Scott. He's getting a reputation for Karen, and now to Renee. We're getting 3 queer characters in a row. So I did not find any interviews, so I don't know if he is a queer creator, but he's certainly putting his touch on queer characters. And there's not a hell of a lot of action in the first issue, but where it does take place, it's handled very well, and there's some really nice character moments. That page with Kate Kane and just her pose, it's just so beautiful. I absolutely love that. Like, Caleb, that would be a page I would want.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, I need that in my life.
Yeah,
I love, and even the page you've got up right now, it's got Renee Montoya in this kind of spaghetti western duster outfit,
Yeah.
and the way that the duster is drawn behind her, that not only, I mean, you're showing a piece of clothing that is kind of A-shaped and A-framed and billowing in the back, but you still see her and her shape and her curves, and her silhouette is sexy but bold and assertive. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
I need to read this. I have not read this yet. And I love the question.
I think you will like it. I think you'll like the interplay within the larger DC universe. And this is one thing, like one of my favorite comments ever at a convention was, how distinctly set off Vertigo was from DC. And one of the people who was talking about that, one of the people at, one of the audience members of the panel was like, it's okay. You can have them talk to Swamp Thing. We can take it. We can handle it. And I think, though it's, a few doors down, I think the more gritty, crime-oriented characters that DC has can coexist with the more superheroic elements. And this proves that immensely apparent that is the case.
And they do the same thing too with the magic characters. I mean, like Vertigo had these really like hardcore magic characters that like really delved into really dark and in many cases gruesome stories, but they mesh so well with Zatanna and like other magical characters in the main DC universe that when they cross over or when they were brought over from New 52 into sort of, like Hellblazer, Swamp Thing, things like that. Yeah. Anything involving magic actually worked. It worked because
one of my favorite things about the Dennis Cowan run were the scenes where it's the Question Green Lantern, not Green Arrow, excuse me.
Yeah.
You get those moments that are just, they can absolutely. Well, and you can put John Constantine with anybody. So he can hold his own with Superman and still, be that weird, sarcastic, gritty character next to the Boy Scout.
Who's probably going to get you killed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's my book, and I hope you'll check it out. All right. Well, let's go over to Steve. Steve has a much more independent-based comic to discuss. So tell us what you're reading, which you are enjoying.
So I enjoy mature titles very often, and one of the very frequent creators that writes and draws a lot of these mature titles is the wonderfully talented Maria Lovett. I every time I pick up a book, when she was doing the Three Faithless series. Literally, I would be so excited when I got my poly-bagged pink cardboard, cover. I would just hold it up to Tony at the shop and say, "Oh, my smut is here!" And just I absolutely love it because it's so sensual. Her work just really does a lot to explore sort of the physical nature of lust and love, and works in a lot of mystical elements, horror elements, supernatural elements, in a way that's extremely tasteful and also beautiful to look at. But the stories themselves are oftentimes very, she doesn't tend to do a lot of dialogue. Faithless, I think, is one where there's a lot of dialogue in there. But sometimes when she pulls back a little bit and just has her characters show more than tell.
Well,
You get some really great work.
the part of that with Faithless was because that was Azarello. So
Oh, Azarella was doing the writing, yeah, but she was doing all the art on that. But yeah, she does. She also has had several of her own that she's written and drawn, and she does do. I can't remember. There was one involving sort of in immortality cult. Right now, it's going to drive me nuts. Where basically she had. Oh, and of course, Eros Psyche. Yes, from Ablaze, so good. Crave, which was one of her last miniseries about a sort of a killer, do anything you want app that runs rampant at a prep school or college. Like, I mean, those were some great books. The latest one I'm talking about is Violent Flowers. And it was just 4-issue miniseries. However, she did say in the afterword in this final issue of issue number 4 that she is planning on going back and exploring these characters further and sort of fleshing out more of the story. But Violent Flowers is at its heart a story of just a snapshot of these decadent, long-lived vampires, essentially a coven of vampires, including the queen of all the vampires and a few of her sort of more trusted court, more powerful members of her court. And you can tell obviously by the covers, and she draws several versions of the covers. She has several other contributors do multiple covers for this as well. And Image is pretty good about it. We're not looking at like a dynamite amount of like 50 covers per issue, but it's a good amount, and the art is beautiful. It's just her showing different characters in different poses like this, but really gives you an idea of what you're going to expect when you open up the pages. But essentially, this group of vampires have a sort of a dirty, buried secret. One of their members, one of the, I guess, most celebrated members, Erzsébet, has been imprisoned underwater for centuries. And she somehow manipulates her way out of this underwater prison by sort of manipulating Nicodemus, another very old vampire who's considered the sentinel, the guardian of all that is sort of royal within the vampire culture. And in doing so, she comes back to take her revenge on all those that she blames for her imprisonment. And one of them is Cornelia, who is essentially the queen's most trusted or right-hand woman. Cornelia, of course, decides that she is going to go after Erzsébet. She's going to track her down, take revenge for what she did to Nicodemus, and either kill her or put her back in prison. And she takes with her a young human girl, Anna, who is the queen's sort of little human blood bag / plaything. And because Anna's just sort of, she's really into this world. She really wants to be part of this and wants to see more. So, of course, through the 4 issues, she is looking for Erzsébet. She finds her, and Erzsébet, of course, has one of the most powerful weapons that she does use against Cornelia, and there's a lot of fight back and forth. But again, throughout this, you're seeing a lot of flashbacks. You're seeing a lot of very, vibrant, scenes where you understand who these people are, and just beautiful layouts. This, of course, is the cover for the final issue with Erzsébet with the red hair and Cornelia all bloodied and dripping with the weapon in between. But really, I mean, she does just a very great job in sort of setting the sort of gothic tone and really showing who these characters are. The designs are beautiful. The queen herself is constantly surrounded by these snakes that just undulate all over her. And you could tell by the way that their mouths is very Maria Lovett mouth. They're extremely pouty lips, and they're always slightly open. And there's just something that, these women are constantly just on the verge of just going, I love it. But at the same time, there's also this really, great gothic vampire horror and romance element to this that just fits. Like, her art just fits so well to this. But I've got a couple of panels that are up on the screen right now, and a lot of them do not have a lot of dialogue to them. They're all based on how they're looking, how she frames the page, how she frames the confrontations between these characters. So, just gorgeous.
Steve, have you ever seen Maria Lovett's just raw pencils with no colors?
I have not, and I really would love to.
I think when you do, one of the things that you'll when I look at them, one of the things that I see is, especially with her women and her line, she's doing a really cool Frank Miller Sin City thing, like the facial lines that she has for the women. Because one thing, and this is both a pro and a con. This is critique, not criticism. Is Maria Lovett's characters? They all kind of look alike. Like every character, kind of like she has tropes that she does. But if you look at the line work and stuff without the colors, there's really a Frank Miller sensibility about it that I don't know that a lot of people are talking about. I think she pulled a lot from him, and especially her women. I love her work. I think she's phenomenal. She is sensual but violent at the same time. I think she does a really good job threading that needle, and it's just stunning. And she really has a strong economy of line. If you look at her stuff, she's doing a lot with honestly not that much. She's got her line is very organic, right? It does seem, it's kind of like flesh. It seems like it moves. It seems like it folds and bends, and it's not rigid. Her it's so kinetic. It's unreal. She's just amazing at it.
Well, and just like looking at this page that's up there, so again, describing it, it's excuse me, standard 5 panels, of equal height and width, with just the confrontation between Cornelia and Erzsébet. But in the top panel, Cornelia is flying in from off of the page. Her hair is trailing behind her into the gutters. Most of her is actually, or some of her is off the panel, whereas everything else is very contained. And when you see that sort of expansive, confrontation at the top go into the very extremely intimate, close, action, this fight that they're having, there's just as much that's intimately sexual as there is violent with it. And, and again, it's not bodice ripped open and, nipples all over the place. Although some of her art is like that. This is just very much, you can see the playfulness of it, and the fact that she really knows how to pose her characters. And with her work, whether it's just the art that she's doing or the art and story, it's just really fun to read, and to enjoy this genre that she really works in.
It really is,
very different from superhero books, very different from pure horror books, and I really appreciate what she does. So,
and I really appreciate you, Steve, for that description for our audio listeners.
Yes. But yeah, Violent Flowers, out by Image. It will be in trade, I believe, in April. The trade is out in April, so you can get all 4 issues in a single book. But she will be revisiting these at a future date.
Cool. All right. Well, we're up against the clock. It's already much later than I thought it was. This flew by here. Jesus. So we're going to start wrapping this show up. When we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we have 2 particular segments that are our end segments. The first is where we show off our geekettes. Now, I assume from this time of year, even Steve has geekettes this time. So, okay, what do you got?
Well, I've got, of course, something that I did pick up from Rich, and that is a Stabbity Bunny #1 with his gorgeous mug and Stabbity Shadow in the back, and some stickers that he sent me. This is a signed copy that I got from one of his auctions. It's great. Okay. And then, of course, I have all the books, all these wonderful books that certain co-hosts have sent me that I have to get reading. So, again, thank you so much, Caleb, and thank you so much, Bill. Daphne Byrne. I can't wait to read this again. I loved it.
I know you like that.
In singles. And this Green Lantern, the Ancient Black Flowman. This is from volume 1. I think this is the start of the latest volume. The volume before the last one.
Yeah, that's the Morris and Liam Sharp. Yeah,
and that first volume is incredible. That's good Morrison. The second volume, not so much, but
the sad thing is, I have all of them in single issues, and I just had not read them yet because they're all over the place. I haven't organized them as much. And then, of course, this one, Caleb. Anything by Taschen, I absolutely drool.
I thought I was hoping you'd like that. I really did.
All right. Cool.
Yes. Thank you very much. Your stuff is coming. It's still coming. It will get there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It'll be our Easter gifts. All right, Steve. Caleb, how
Easter
about
2026?
What have you got to show off?
So I'm just going to show off one thing, but again, it's to the theme of Steve. It is something I got in the mail from my good friend Bill. Everyone needs a friend that will send them Gene Colan drawn Submariner. This is King Size Submariner #1. Again, yeah, drawn by Gene Colan. I love this character. I'm going back and reading the old Masterworks right now. So I'm very much in the mood for this. So this was very timely and very appreciated. Thank you so much.
Okay. I just making sure you got the other stuff in there.
I did. Yep.
Okay.
I did. I just, this was already in my office. And so I really wanted to showcase this.
So I did get stuff from Caleb. One I can't show. The other, though, is this wonderful book, A Scene in Between USA, which is a photo document of independent rock clubs throughout the 1980s. So you're seeing pictures of acts like the Minutemen and Husker Du and Pylon and Fugazi during Revolution Summer. I mean, just amazing stuff. And this was it was very nice to read this. It's a quick read because it's mostly photographs, but the materials that's in there, the reading materials in there are pretty interesting. But the thing that I love the most about it, as somebody who was like a little too young to go to the clubs, but was old enough to be aware of stuff, this provided something that I've been telling people for years and no one believes me. And now I've got photographic proof of it. There was a mod scene in New Jersey. I swear to God, people, and there's some people here. There were bars, there were clubs in areas like New Brunswick and Passaic where they did have these fly-by-night bands that were influenced by the Who and the Jam, and these pictures do exist here. And then also here, there is a picture of one of the major groups, Mod Fun, outside of CBGB's. In 1985, I almost went to this show. It was a little too difficult for me to go because college had just started, and it was a little bit too difficult for me to get up there. But I have friends that went to this show, and also in the New York, New Jersey area, there weren't that many all ages shows. It just wasn't the culture, and this was one of the rare ones at CBGB's, and I this knocked me out because I remember the specifics of this show as so much. And also here is a picture of a band with a group called the Watch Children. I know this woman's brother, and this is them at the Court Tavern, which was a venue that I've been to many times, but I actually never saw a band there. If you went to theater, it was fairly close to George Street Playhouse and some of the other smaller theaters, so it was a place to go afterwards. And this is my friend John's sister, and Watch Children, and they're playing the Gripweeds drum set, but this is not the Gripweeds, so I wonder what the story is beyond that. So that's some of my geek gets. There's some other stuff I wanted to show off because it was the time of year. You'll notice behind me, I kind of put the Beatles box sets away. It's time. I put the discs out of the box sets. They're all in the Beatles section that's up on this top rack here. But one of the reasons I did that was because I got the one that I was missing, so I got the Let It Be box
Nice.
gift over Christmas. Again, this was their final album release, not their final album recorded. It was them at their most frayed, but as Peter Jackson's Get Back, that kind of is dispelled a bit in terms of how people were acting. And then lastly, this is something that came in just the other day. I was very lucky on the pre-sale. We can't even call it a pre-sale, but the sale that went through on Disney Store's app. This is the Mego Marvel set, the first set of 5. They're going to be released over the next 18 or so months. It's the Spider-Man set. In the 70s, there were Spider-Man, Green Goblin, and Lizard figures that Mego put out. These are reproductions of them. And for the first time, you have a Mego Electro. And I was very lucky because he sold out very quickly. If you do go to Avengers Reserve in Anaheim or the Marvel store in Disney Springs in Orlando, they are being sold there, or you could pay really stupid secondary prices. But I got one. I'm very happy about it. Very, very happy about that.
He's giddy. Look at him.
In some ways, a score. Now, this was the time for Christmas presents. I have to ask you guys: have you ever got a Christmas gift for somebody, and you like kind of want it for yourself?
Yes.
All right.
Well, yeah.
This is what I'm going nuts with. I got the Cure album on vinyl for somebody, and it's like I'm dying. I want to keep this.
Now you go ahead and keep it. I'll buy it for me. That's fine.
And those are my geek gets. So we're going to wrap this up now. And the last thing we have of the Comic Book Bears is what we call the woofs of the week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar here where we woof at something which may be comic book or comic book related, maybe a film or a TV program or a childhood initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, I have a wolf here. We do have a comment here from Polar Knights on Twitch. As a barber, I love this. It is every stage of growth. Thank you so much for the comment. That's
great.
Polar Knights.
Yes, A plus comment. So my wolf of the week, because it's our tradition. My husband and I, every Christmas, we've been doing it for several years now. It started in tragedy, but now it's just a great tradition. We go to the movies on Christmas Day, and we absolutely love seeing something cool. In 2023, it was Aquaman 2. And in 2024, it was a Christmas movie. Takes place at Christmas. Christmas is featured. Nosferatu by Robert Eggers. It was great. Wonderful remake of the original 1922 version. It is shot in a very similar way. So if you're not used to that kind of silent era expressionist filmmaking, you might get a little thrown off a bit. There's a lot of melodrama, but it is gorgeous, and the performances are incredible.
It's amazing. It's
incredible.
The best movie I saw from last year.
I want to see it, but Nosferatu always freaked me out.
Oh, and this one will freak you out.
Yes.
This version of Nosferatu
this might be one I watch at home.
The Max Schreck Nosferatu is hands down the scariest thing I've ever watched.
It's otherworldly.
It really is. This plays off of it well, but this did not to me have that same like genuine like this is actually scaring me vibe. I was watching a movie, but it is very powerful. But no, I agree with you. The Max Schreck film is hands down the most terrifying thing I've ever seen.
This one, though, I do have to say,
It's
the
so
design of this Count Orlok. I mean, zombie vampire penis.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get full on.
But
anyway,
they do a good job giving they. It's not aliens, right? They're not keeping it behind the scenes so much, but they pay homage to Dracula and Bram Stoker. They keep him off the page, and it is very epistolary to a degree. So. I just thought it was, I think it's phenomenal, and just the cast, man, like everything about this is great. I love it.
I could talk for a lot of time about how Ellen as a heroine is so much more well defined
Yes.
than than a Lucy from Dracula, because she is not an innocent. She is a fully realized woman of nature in the romantic 1800s sense of a natural woman kind of thing, where she is from the mystical reality that is behind our own reality, and therefore has much more experience. But anyway, great movie. Go see it.
Cool.
Or rent it. I think it's on digital now or very shortly. So.
All right. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
My mother tried to raise me right, but I'm a petty bitch. So Anita Bryant died, and that's my wolf of the week.
So I'll eat some pie in her honor.
At least it wasn't fruit pie.
Yeah.
So happy about that. So, so yes, that did happen. Actually, to be fair, she died like a month ago, and everybody else just kind of like realized that she was missing after a month. So, kudos to her. She didn't have a legacy. Fuck her forever.
Yeah.
So
just live your life in a way that the bullshit isn't what you're remembered for.
Exactly. And for her, it will be.
Live your life. Yeah. That's what you're going to be remembered for.
Unfortunately, that's all she's remembered for right now.
Yeah, that's all.
My actual wolf of the week, though, that is not my actual wolf of the week, but I would co-sign that with a positive. I was able to catch up and watch. I'm not finished, but watch a whole lot of Superman and Lois. Oh my god! Oh my god! just tears. And
good.
Rending, and like I had to at one point turn it off, and like it was the middle of the night, and I was off work, so I didn't have to go to bed early. And Roger was upstairs sleeping, and I was crying, and I just walked in the bed, just like had to go hold him. That is it is an amazing depiction of Clark. It's an amazing. I love their family. I love the dynamics. I love this version of Steel and John Henry. I mean, just all of it put together is fantastic comic book television, and it feels like comic books to me, and it's got that vibe, and they just nail Superman. Like, and I also would nail Superman, but they just get it right. It's so good.
I mean, Tyler Hoechlin.
Oh my god, that jaw! Have you ever just looked at that man's jawline? It's not
For
real.
A long period of time, yes.
No skinny man should have that jawline. It doesn't make sense, but it works so well.
Well, now you have to go back and see him as a youngin in Teen Wolf,
and a film I really like based on a comic book, Road to Perdition.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He was a kid. He was the kid in Road to Perdition.
Yeah. Okay, for my wolf of the week, I have a combined wolf of the week. I should have sent Steve a graphic for this, but I didn't. But initially it wasn't, but it stayed with me after I watched it yesterday. So mine's a very 60s wolf of the week. Sky TV in the UK recently broadcast a documentary on the Yardbirds, which is called The Yardbirds, and it has interviews with the surviving members, with members who have since passed on, like Jeff Beck. And there's a couple of Yardbirds documentaries out there, but this probably was the best one. Ventured into areas that they normally don't go into, particularly with the late lead singer Keith Relf and some of his difficulties. It was really well done. I hope there is a U.S. broadcast for that, because I didn't exactly watch it in a correct manner. And somebody enabled me, but it really is really wonderful. And then it tied in with that, I got this book recently. It's called Marquee, the story of the world's greatest music venue, and it's published by Trouser Press. If you want to go to my Facebook page, there's a lengthy post I have about meeting Ira Robbins, who was the publisher of Trouser Press. But it covers the Marquee Club in London, mostly at their original address at Wardour Street. The Who were the house band, played over 30 shows there for a time. In terms of the Yardbirds, Eric Clapton played his last gig as a Yardbird at the Marquee, and a month later, Jeff Beck played his first gig at the Marquee as a Yardbird. And the club went into the 80s, was a huge nexus for the burgeoning punk movement. There also is a very big tie with the club, with the Reading Rock Festival, and that's all covered in here. And, sometimes books about clubs can be boring. There's some really good CBGB's books, and there's some terrible ones.
Yeah.
So this is one of the good ones because the Marquis is a character in and of itself. The way that it's presented here. So that's my woof of the week, Marquis. And writers are Robert Sellers and Nick Pendleton. You can get it through Trouser Press Books.
When the Yardbirds were playing there, where was that in terms of when did Jimmy Page join that band?
Jimmy Page joined in 1967, and there was a very brief period where Page he actually came in on bass.
Yeah, no, he wasn't playing guitar for him.
Yeah. And then Chris Drea, who was was a little better at bassist. So there's one single that they put out where it's both Page and Beck on guitar.
Okay.
Happening in 10 years time ago. But he joined in 1967 and basically was the focal point after Beck left. And, however you look at it, the Yardbirds morphed into Led Zeppelin.
They did. Yeah.
You
don't get Zeppelin.
The very first gigs that Led Zeppelin played were billed as the New Yardbirds.
Yep.
So
that's how I actually found out about the Yardbirds, was because I loved Led Zeppelin and I read Hammer of the Gods, and I was like, oh, the Wait, what do you mean? Like Jeff Beck was? Yeah. That's what led me to that.
Yeah. And just some amazing records that they put out. Shapes of Things. It's one of the best singles of the 60s. Absolutely best singles of the 60s. And it's a shame that they weren't bigger. It really is, because they're but they also broke, for a band that had a very chaotic history, they kind of broke up on very cordial terms with some of the members forming Renaissance. They didn't stay with Renaissance, but that was the initial band that they went through, and that's Jim McCarty and Keith Relf, and that's a very different vibe from the blues and later psychedelic oriented Yardbirds into what's effectively folk progressive. So this is such an interesting story. All right, fellas, it's the 300th episode. This is Sparta. Let's give them a screenshot. Let's give them what they want.
Oh, God.
Right. We're going shirtless.
Well, first I have to take off my sweatshirt. There we go. Who is the whitest one here?
Yeah. And that gentleman, the gentleman who provided the thing about the three different shades of the different types of beard. I think body and tan.
Yeah,
I hear too.
Three different shades.
This is like the evolution of man. So somehow the tattoos got erased over time.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, we are the Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the other social media outlets as Comic Book Bears. If you want to listen to us, you can catch us through Apple Podcasts, through Spotify, and the other podcatching platforms. If you joined us tonight through Facebook Live, thank you. If you joined us through Twitch, thank you. If you joined us through YouTube, thank you. And again, these shows are archived on YouTube, and please like and subscribe if you would. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Again, this is our 300th episode. I can't say goodbye without acknowledging some of our past hosts, Justin Allen, Matt Brossard, and the still sort of present Brian Pittard, who is away in Spain right now. Poor guy. Yeah, it's just horrible. Until next time, and there will be a 301. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear Wolf and an Explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Wolf.